Previously, as Jinwoo saved Hyun's life by transforming Byung-gu into a shadow soldier. As the Korean hunters departed, Jinwoo stayed behind to clear the remaining ants. Afterward, he reached level 100 and resurrected the Ant King as a shadow soldier, naming him Beru. New characters were introduced, including a Chinese 5-star hunter and 2 potential future enemies, while Jinwoo's father observed them from the shadows. After the Jeju Island raid, Jinwoo honored those who had lost their lives. He then secured permission to open his own guild before stepping into another Red Gate alone. Inside the Red Gate, Jinwoo's shadow soldiers fought against the gate's monsters. He managed to find the boss, and the creature asked him if he was the one who had been killing his people. It remarks with twisted amusement how impressed it is that Jinwoo managed to make it this far, despite having such a small, seemingly fragile body. But that amusement quickly turns to menace. The creature raises its hand and signals to its forces. He had already stationed his minions throughout the area, ready to spring a deadly ambush. But something's wrong. Nothing happens. The creature glances around in confusion. The air stays silent. No allies appear from the shadows. No attack is launched. Just an unsettling quiet. A frown begins to form on the creature's face. Meanwhile, Jinwoo remains still, calm, his gaze fixed firmly on his opponent. Not a trace of panic shows on his face. Then Jinwoo finally speaks. "Call me small again. That's funny." He raises his hand and gives a subtle signal. Suddenly, from the dark edges of the forest, movement stirs. One by one, figures emerge. Shadow soldiers, loyal and fierce, marching out with unwavering purpose. Some drag behind them the severed heads of the enemies fallen. The forest grows darker as the ground begins to fill with Jinwoo's summoned army. Jinwoo, standing tall among his shadows, taunts once more. "Looks like no one from your side made it out." Confusion turns into dread. Then, thud, something hits the creature square in the face. Startled, it reaches up and grabs the object. It's another corpse, one of its own. Eyes wide, the creature lifts its head and sees Jinwoo again, this time surrounded by a vast army, a sea of darkness prepared to devour anything in its path. Panic fully takes over. The creature shouts in desperation, ordering any remaining forces to attack and destroy Jinwoo's army. But Jinwoo remains composed. He calmly gives his order. "Wipe them out." Both sides surge forward, and the battlefield erupts. But from the very first clash, it's clear. The outcome is already decided. Jinwoo's shadow soldiers are faster, stronger, and better organized. They strike with deadly precision, overwhelming the enemy with little resistance. As the intense battle unfolds, Sung Jinwoo begins advancing toward the dungeon's boss. Leading the way ahead of him is Tank, the enormous shadow bear who crashes through enemy lines with ease, clearing a path for his master. Sensing the threat, the boss monster erupts with rage. It roars and charges directly at Jinwoo, attempting to stop him before he can get closer. But before it can land a single blow, 2 powerful shadows intervene. Beru swoops in with incredible speed, slicing off one of the boss's arms with razor-sharp claws. Igris follows right behind, his sword flashing through the air as he severs one of the creature's legs. The massive beast collapses to the ground, overwhelmed. As it tries to lift its head, another presence looms over it. Tusk, the high mage of Jinwoo's army. Without hesitation, Tusk casts inverse gravity, pinning the boss down with an unseen force. The ground buckles beneath the weight, rendering the monster completely immobile. Step by step, Jinwoo approaches. Calm, he comes face to face with the fallen creature. His voice is low and cold. "You'll answer my questions," Jinwoo says. "It'll hurt less if you cooperate." He proceeds to interrogate the boss, trying to extract vital information. But once it's over, Jinwoo stands before its lifeless corpse, silently reflecting. Again, nothing useful. He suspects the same interference as before. The system itself may be blocking the flow of information. Frustrated but not surprised, Jinwoo opens his inventory. "I'll figure it out eventually," he mutters. "So it's fine." From within the inventory, he retrieves a peculiar object, a key. It's one he obtained earlier from a cursed random box. Jinwoo recalls an important moment. He had reached level 100 during the Jeju Island raid. That achievement fulfilled the minimum requirement to unlock a special dungeon. Now the item's name becomes visible. Key to the Temple of Carthion. A countdown timer ticks beside the key's description, indicating the limited window of time before the key would expire and the dungeon would be lost. As he studies the item, vivid memories flood his mind. Flashbacks of the double dungeon, the place where everything began. He realizes something. This may not be random. The system is calling him back. But he's not the same man who once crawled out of that dungeon barely alive. Now he's stronger, far stronger, stronger than anything that temple might hold. He wonders if all of this was orchestrated from the beginning, if that dungeon is still waiting for him. And if it is, then wait for me. Meanwhile, deep inside the Temple of Carthion, a shadowy figure stirs. Sitting in the darkness, an entity smirks, sensing Jinwoo's resolve from afar. It hears his words and prepares. Jinwoo is coming. The scene shifts to a dark and eerie dungeon. A man trembles in fear, trapped. In desperation, the man stammers, demanding to know who or what this creature is. But the figure responds coldly, as if talking to himself. He's not the one either. A pause lingers in the air, then the figure mutters again. They're hiding well, those brilliant fragments of light. This cryptic remark refers to powerful beings, ancient rulers known as the brilliant light fragments, scattered and concealed in human hosts. It's Silid, known as the king of the snowfolk, the monarch of frost. Sensing a familiar aura, Silid turns. Standing in the shadows is Yogment, the king of demonic specters, also known as the monarch of transfiguration. With a calm and confident tone, Yogment announces that he has news regarding the eastern island. Silid narrows his eyes, asking if he means the small landmass that lies eastward, the one humans call Korea. That island is the current dwelling of the Shadow Monarch. Intrigued, Silid asks if Yogment intends to take action there. Yogment explains that the rulers have begun deploying their legions near that region, just south of the Shadow Monarch's territory. He then adds, with a hint of ambition, that he will be the one to claim that place. But Silid challenges him, pointing out the obvious risk. And how do you plan to deal with the Shadow Monarch himself? Yogment, unfazed, gives a sly smile and responds, if the planner fulfills the contract, everything will go according to plan. Then with growing interest he adds, besides, the greatest of the brilliant light fragments has been confirmed to be there. This revelation changes everything. Silid's expression sharpens with excitement. He turns toward Yogment, realizing the implications. You came all the way here, just to tell me that. Yogment nods slightly, then inquires what Silid plans to do with that information. Silid responds with a smirk. If you're willing to follow me, then why not? But before their conversation can continue, Silid pauses. His eyes scan the surroundings. Something feels off. We've been lured here. A third figure approaches. Silid watches carefully and comments that the man they saw earlier couldn't have possibly held the power of a brilliant fragment. Yet somehow the traces of that power are here. This can only mean one thing. Someone intentionally baited them. And now that someone is standing right in front of them. With burning rage in his eyes, the man confronts them. He demands to know more about the small island to the east. He suspects they're referring to his homeland, Korea. Silid smirks at the man's fury and responds with mockery. And what will you do about it? From behind, Yogment speaks up, clearly uninterested in wasting time. We don't have time to deal with him. They begin to turn away, but Silid can't resist throwing one last taunt. Try and stop us if you can. The man explodes into motion. Furious, he charges toward them with raw power, vowing not to let them escape. But Silid remains still. In an instant, an ice shield forms in front of him, effortlessly blocking the incoming attack. He grins, unfazed, as if amused by the attempt. With a calm but menacing aura, the Monarch of Frost raises his hand. A pulse of power erupts. A devastating wave of frost energy explodes outward, shaking the dungeon to its core. The scene transitions from the chaos of the battlefield to a quiet parking lot. Sung Jinwoo walks toward his car. Just as he reaches for the door handle, a voice calls out behind him. Excuse me, he says politely. Are you Sung Jinwoo? Jinwoo turns slightly, nodding cautiously. The man introduces himself as Adam White, a senior official from the Federal Bureau of Hunters, a powerful U.S. organization. He hands Jin Wu a business card and adds with a smile, "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Sung. Please feel free to call me Adam." Adam quickly apologizes for the unexpected approach. He admits that Jinwoo was hard to track down and even mentions that he dropped by Jinwoo's office earlier. Hearing this, Jinwoo remembers something. This must be the man Yu Jinho had mentioned, the one asking around for him. Jinwoo narrows his eyes and asks directly, "What business do you have with me?" Adam remains calm and respectful. He explains that he's here to share important information. That piques Jinwoo's interest. "What kind of information?" he asks. Adam gives a subtle smile, then answers, "Information that no country or institution in the world could provide, except for us." Jinwoo raises an eyebrow. "And why would you share that kind of information with me?" Adam responds without hesitation, "Because people like you are worth sharing it with. It's mutually beneficial," he continues, revealing that their original purpose for contacting Jinwoo was something entirely different. But after witnessing what Jinwoo did during the Jeju Island raid, their deputy director insisted on meeting him in person. This level of attention is unprecedented, Adam admits. But the deputy director will explain the details himself. He gestures toward a car parked nearby. "If you'd like, we can take you to him now." Jinwoo glances at the vehicle, his expression thoughtful. He still isn't fully convinced whether the information is trustworthy. As he opens the door to his own car, he replies, "Let me think it over. I'll contact you." Adam chuckles softly, as if expecting that answer. "How silly of me," he says. "I forgot one rule. Never hide a strong hand when trying to strike a deal." He pauses, then says two words that immediately grab Jinwoo's attention. "An upgrader." Jinwoo freezes. Adam explains further. "An upgrader," he says, "is an awakened individual with the ability to enhance the power of another awakened being. You've heard of them, haven't you?" As he speaks, the scene shifts. Adam and Jinwoo are now in a car, pulling up to a building where a bigger conversation and deeper truths are about to be revealed. Inside, Adam White leads Sung Jinwoo into a quiet meeting room. Adam introduces him as Michael Connor, the deputy director of the Federal Bureau of Hunters. Michael stands and shakes Jinwoo's hand firmly. "It's a pleasure to meet you," he says. With formalities out of the way, Adam takes his seat and mentions that he will serve as their interpreter during the meeting. Wasting no time, Michael slides a stack of documents across the table toward Jinwoo. The folder contains immigration paperwork. Michael explains that under normal circumstances, acquiring American citizenship would take 1 to 2 years of processing. But for Jinwoo, all it takes is a word, Michael says confidently. "We're prepared to make you a citizen immediately." Jinwoo, however, stays focused. He calmly replies, "I came here because Mr. White said you had information to share." And questions, "Is it truly possible to upgrade a hunter's abilities?" Michael smiles knowingly and gives a surprising response. "In fact, the one who can do that is here, right now." He turns to one of his staff and says, "Please call Ms. Selner in." Moments later, a woman enters the room with quiet grace and calm confidence. Michael stands and introduces her. "This is Norma Selner," he says, "the only person in the world who can enhance an awakened being's abilities." Jinwoo observes her closely. She feels different, not just in appearance, but in the unique aura she carries. "She doesn't feel like any hunter I've met before," he thinks. Michael then encourages Ms. Selner to explain her ability in her own words. She steps forward and begins, addressing Jinwoo directly. "I understand if you're skeptical. Everyone I've met had the same look when they first heard this." She pauses, then adds with a faint smile, "But once they experienced it, they begged for more." As she walks toward Jinwoo, Michael gently calls out to her, keeping the moment grounded. Ms. Selner begins to explain. She tells Jinwoo that every awakened individual has a natural limit, a ceiling they cannot surpass. A hunter's rank is fixed, and unless they undergo a second awakening, their power will never grow beyond that limit. This fact is widely accepted as common knowledge throughout the awakened world. But then Jinwoo asks, "So, you can change that?" Without hesitation, Ms. Selner nods. "Yes, I have the ability to lift that limit." She goes on to describe a process that happens in 3 stages. a gradual unlocking of a person's true potential. She admits that she didn't know what to call this ability at first, but over time, it became known as a force reawakening. Put simply, she can draw out the true strength hidden within an awakened being. Mr. Connor nodded in agreement with Ms. Selner, affirming that everything she had explained was indeed true. However, he was quick to add an important limitation. Each time Ms. Selner used her ability, it drained her immensely. Because of this, she could only help around 3 to 4 people in a single year. Jin Wu remained quiet, but his thoughts were racing. If what they said was true, then he might be one of the few chosen to benefit from such a rare and powerful ability. That alone spoke volumes about its value. Curious, he leaned forward slightly and asked how effective this enhancement process truly was. Ms. Selner responded calmly, explaining that the results varied from person to person. However, for those who completed all 3 stages, the increase in physical capability ranged from 20% to 30%. That number hit Jinwoo like a thunderbolt. To someone already at the peak of their abilities, a 30% boost was almost unthinkable. He finally understood why someone like Hwang Dong-soo had accepted the U.S. offer, even if it meant public backlash. It all made sense now. Who in their right mind would turn down such a chance? Still, a thought crossed his mind. What would happen if others discovered the truth about Miss Selner's power? Mr. Connor answered that concern without hesitation. That was precisely why the U.S. government kept her under close protection. In exchange for her cooperation, she received full security and a generous salary. In return, she assisted in strengthening select hunters, those deemed valuable enough to receive her gift. With that, Mr. Connor formally reintroduced Miss Selner to Jinwoo, stating that her powers would be used on him as a token of goodwill. Jinwoo, still unsure of their motives, questioned whether this was truly a gift or just bait to draw him in. Connor clarified his position. If Jinwoo agreed to work with the Federal Bureau of Hunters, he would receive top-tier benefits. They would also personally arrange introductions to any guild he preferred and assist him in negotiating the most favorable contract. Ms. Selner then gently pushed a small plate across the table toward Jinwoo. She assured him there was no need to rush his decision. They simply wanted him to take time and consider the offer. Jinwoo looked at her with a hint of surprise. She reaffirmed that, as they had said, this was a gift, not a demand. After a brief pause, Mr. Connor made another proposal. He asked if Jinwoo would allow them to temporarily remove his limits so that he could experience the effects firsthand. Jinwoo was taken aback. For nothing in return, he asked. Connor responded that it was to be considered a complimentary demonstration, meant only to show him the potential of what was being offered. At that moment, Jinwoo remembered something Miss Selner had said earlier, that once he felt the power, he would come back on his own, begging for more. Her confidence now made perfect sense. Ms. Selner then requested that Jinwoo hold out his hand and look directly into her eyes. She explained this was the first step in the process. Watching from the side, Michael Connor observed quietly. From his perspective, Jinwoo had already taken the bait. He was calm, calculating, and listening. But Connor believed that once Jinwoo experienced even the first stage, he would come back to them voluntarily. And if he was the impulsive type, he might even sign the papers right then and there. As the process began, Jinwoo extended his hand toward Miss Selner. The moment she took hold of it, a faint glow started radiating from his skin. A green aura gradually enveloped him, and a flicker of light ignited deep within his eyes. Mr. Connor silently observed, his mind drifting to Jinwoo's past achievements. He recalled how Jinwoo had turned the tide during the catastrophic Jeju Island raid, displaying powers that defied explanation. Even now, he couldn't help but wonder, what more is this man capable of? The energy continued to surge. Ms. Selner's eyes began to shimmer, and her entire body was cloaked in a radiant yet eerie light. Then, something shifted. It was as if her consciousness had been pulled elsewhere. Suddenly, everything around her faded into a vast void of darkness. Within that black expanse, a vague outline began to emerge. A shadowed figure stepped forward, slowly, from the depths. Each step it took brought it closer, closer to her. And then, it stood directly in front of her. Its presence was overwhelming. Its glowing, fearsome eyes pierced through her soul. It wasn't just looking at her, it was watching her, as if silently warning her that she had trespassed where she shouldn't. Overcome with fear, Miss Selner let out a scream. The glowing energy shattered. The process came to an abrupt halt. The atmosphere in the room instantly turned hostile. Agents nearby sprang into action, drawing their weapons and aiming them directly at Jinwoo. Panic and confusion filled the air as they demanded to know what he had done to Ms. Selner. But before they could escalate any further, Mr. Connor exploded in rage. Slamming his hand on the table, he yelled at the agents, calling them fools. "Do you even realize who you're pointing your guns at?" he barked. "If you're so concerned, go check on Miss Selner. Don't stand there acting like amateurs." Turning toward Jinwoo, Mr. Connor lowered his head and apologized. His voice was firm but regretful. The agents had overstepped. Jinwoo, still composed despite the sudden hostility, accepted the apology with a calm, "It's all right." But the tension wasn't gone yet. Fuming, Mr. Connor walked over to the nearest agent and leaned in, his tone colder than ever. "If this were Thomas Andre or Liu Zhigang sitting in that chair," he said, "you'd all be dead right now." The terrified agent could only nod in silence. Connor then turned his attention back to Miss Selner, who was now visibly shaken. Her body trembled, and sweat clung to her skin as if she'd just escaped a nightmare. Concerned, he asked if she was feeling unwell. Seeing her condition, Mr. Connor quickly addressed Jinwoo again, explaining that it would be best to postpone the procedure. Jinwoo, understanding the situation, agreed without hesitation. With a subtle gesture, Mr. Connor instructed Adam White to escort Jinwoo out of the room. Once the door closed behind them, the room fell silent, except for the sound of Ms. Selner's ragged breathing. Mr. Connor approached her carefully, his tone softer now. He asked her what had just happened. Ms. Selner, still unable to calm herself, finally spoke. Her voice trembled. "He's a king," she whispered. "A powerful one." Connor blinked, startled by the term. "Do you mean like a national-level hunter?" he asked, still trying to make sense of her words. But Ms. Selner shook her head. Her expression turned pale. "No, not like that," she said. "I've never seen anything like this before." She repeated the words again, slower this time. "He's a king, but not just any king." She paused, trying to gather herself. "When I looked into him, he looked back at me. Within him, there was nothing but darkness, a depth I couldn't escape from." Her hands were still trembling as she added, "There's no limit to his power." Inside the newly established guild office, Yu Jin-ho sat at his desk, focused on paperwork. As he wrapped up a few reports, he muttered under his breath with a scoff, "Some people just never learn. Filing complaints after getting sued, whining like kids. That's not how this works." After some time, Jin-ho leaned back and nodded in satisfaction. He believed he had successfully tracked down all the groups that had been spreading false rumors about Jinwoo. While taking a short break, he suddenly noticed Jinwoo standing silently behind him. Startled, Jin-ho turned around. Jinwoo commented with a smirk, "You're working pretty hard." Jin-ho could only think to himself, how does he always appear without making a sound? Jinwoo asked if everything was running smoothly. Jin-ho reassured him that there were no issues. Then, noticing Jinwoo's outfit, he asked why he was dressed like that. Without answering directly, Jinwoo handed him a bag filled with magical cores. "You said we needed funds for the guild," Jinwoo explained. Opening the bag, Jinho's eyes widened. The contents were more than enough. "Well, I guess we won't need to worry about paying employee salaries anymore," he joked. Jinwoo tilted his head. "What do you mean?" Jinho reminded him that hiring another guild member meant they'd need to cover that person's salary too. Jinwoo nodded in agreement. "Even if we're only filling the guild's required numbers, we need someone who's loyal, someone who's in it for the long run, not just a placeholder." Then, with a more serious tone, Jinho brought up an important topic. "There's something we need to take care of first," he said. "We need a name for the guild." Jinwoo sighed dramatically. "I thought it was something serious." But Jinho countered, "It is serious." Jinho leaned in, throwing out suggestions. "How about Sung Yu Guild, based on your surname? Or Yu Sung, it flows better. Or even Woohoo Guild, using the last syllables of our names. Wait, maybe Jinjin Guild, based on our middle characters." Listening to all the creative, if slightly ridiculous, suggestions, Jinwoo finally declared his decision. "We'll name it Solo Play Guild," he said. Jinho blinked. Was that supposed to be a joke? Before he could respond, a knock came at the door. Jinho got up and opened it. On the other side stood a familiar figure, Hunter Cha Hae-in. Surprised, he asked, "What are you doing here?" Cha responded directly, "I want to join your guild." Soon after, they sat around the table together. Jinwoo looked at her with curiosity and asked her to clarify why she was there. Cha repeated calmly, "As I said, I'd like to join your guild." Jinwoo was puzzled. What's happening? He asked if the chairman had requested her to join, or perhaps if Hunter Choi Jong-in had expelled her from the Hunter Guild. Cha firmly denied both. Looking at her more seriously, Jinwoo asked, "Then why would you want to join a guild like mine, especially with that name?" Cha raised an eyebrow. "Wait, you really named it Solo Play Guild?" Jinwoo nodded. "Yeah. What's the problem? The Vice Master and I agreed on it." Jinho quickly objected. "Hey, when did I agree to that? What about the names I suggested?" Shifting his gaze to Cha, Jinho subtly examined her breathing and expression. She seemed calm, but he could tell it was an act. She's hiding something. But why? Then he asked bluntly, "You were awakened 2 years ago. You're still under contract with the Hunter Guild, aren't you?" Cha nodded but added, "I have enough to pay the cancellation penalty." That response caught Jinwoo off guard. "She's even willing to pay the penalty." He replied honestly, "Our guild doesn't have the resources to match what an S rank like you usually receives." Cha countered effortlessly, "That's fine. I don't need an upfront payment." Jinwoo frowned slightly. "But there's nothing here for you to gain. So why would you want to join us?" Cha paused, unsure how to explain the thoughts racing through her mind. If I tell him the truth, it'll sound insane. Her mind flashed back to the Jeju Island raid. She remembered regaining consciousness in a helicopter. The chairman had told her they had just landed at the association and that the hunters would soon be transferred to the hospital. She immediately asked about Jinwoo. Was he the one who saved them? The answer was yes. She had nearly died. And in the future, something like that could happen again. Next time, I might not survive. Back in the present, she struggled to find the right words. Her cheeks reddened. "I want to stand by your side, all the way to the end." Jinwoo noticed her silence and the color rising in her face. Why can't she answer? What is she hiding? He asked again. "So you're not going to answer me?" Cha finally responded. "I just want to live a peaceful life." "Is that so wrong?" Jinwoo paused. She's only 22. Carrying the pressure of being an S rank at her age must be overwhelming. After everything that happened on Jeju Island, her choice makes sense. After a moment, he said, "There's an entrance test for our guild." Surprised, Cha replied, "That wasn't in the recruitment notice." Jinwoo shrugged. Probably a new policy from the Vice Master. He turned to Jinho. "Can you get us some drinks and snacks?" Jinho left the room. Once they were alone, Cha asked, "So what kind of test is it?" Jinwoo answered plainly. "You'll have to defeat one of my summons." Cha raised an eyebrow. "Am I really that weak in your eyes?" "What kind of summon?" Jinwoo smiled slightly. "For you, Hunter Cha, I'll use my strongest one." Cha stood up. "When's the test?" "Right now," Jinwoo said. "Let's go to the association gym." He thought to himself, "This is the perfect time to test whether Shadow Exchange works with two people." He turned to her and said, "You don't need to walk. We'll take a shortcut." He stepped closer. "We just need to stick close together for a second." Darkness enveloped them as Jinwoo activated Shadow Exchange. They vanished. A moment later, Jinho returned to the office carrying snacks. But when he walked in, he didn't see Jinwoo or Cha. Instead, standing in the room was a towering high orc. The two stared at each other in complete silence. Then, without a word, the orc reached out, took the food tray from Jinho's hands, and devoured it in one massive bite. Jinho could only blink in disbelief. The scene shifts to the quiet gymnasium of the Hunter Association. Cha Hae-in looked around surprised. She had just arrived through Jinwoo's teleportation ability. Turning to him, she asked in amazement, "How did you do that?" Jinwoo, keeping calm, thought to himself, "I was right. Shadow Exchange acts like a portal. I can bring someone along. He didn't explain much. Instead, he simply said, "Let's begin." But Cha paused. She realized she had forgotten her usual weapon. "I left it behind," she said. Jinwoo raised an eyebrow. "You mean that pickaxe?" Cha frowned slightly. "That's not my weapon." Jinwoo chuckled. "I was just kidding." Looking around, Cha mentioned there might be a spare weapon in the storage area. She moved toward the nearby door and opened it, revealing a stockpile of reserve gear. Not top quality, she thought, but decent enough for practice. She eventually emerged holding a standard sword and told Jinwoo she was ready. Jinwoo glanced at the blade in her hand. "Will you be all right?" "That's not your usual weapon," Cha responded with resolve. "Weapons don't matter. Monsters never fight us on our terms anyway." Jinwoo nodded slowly. She's right. Now came the question, who would be the right summon? An ordinary shadow soldier wouldn't stand a chance against someone like Cha. After a brief thought, Jin Wu summoned a powerful knight draped in black armor. "Among my forces, he's the best with a sword," Jin Wu thought. The knight stepped forward. His name was Igris. Clad in heavy black armor and radiating silent intensity, Igris stood ready. Cha asked a logical question. "What are the win conditions?" Jin Wu explained. "You win by defeating the summon. You lose if you surrender." Even as he spoke, he reflected on his earlier words. "I said I'd use my strongest summon, but Baru would overwhelm her. This knight will do just fine for now." With both sides prepared, Jin Wu raised his hand to begin the test. But just as Cha started channeling mana, Jin Wu stopped them. "Wait a moment," he said, motioning for her to turn around. From his inventory, he pulled out a gleaming blade, the Demon King's longsword. He handed it to Igris. "Use this," he ordered. Once the weapon was in place, Jin Wu gave the signal again. "Begin." The battle started instantly. Igris moved first, channeling the power of the enchanted sword. A streak of crackling electricity surged forward, aiming for Cha. But she was already on the move. With a swift motion, she dodged the electric arc with grace and speed. As expected, Jin Wu thought. She's fast. That sword would have cut down anyone else with a single swipe. What followed was an intense exchange of blows. Igris pressed forward with practiced precision, while Cha countered with sharp instincts and skill. The sound of steel echoed through the facility. Meanwhile, in his office nearby, Chairman Go Gun-hee was reviewing some documents when the noise caught his attention. He paused. No one should be in the gym today, he thought. He reached for his phone and called an assistant. "Connect the gymnasium's security feed to my monitor." As the footage came into view, his eyes widened. It was Jinwoo and Hunter Cha. He watched silently for a moment. Then a knowing smile crept across his face. "I see. So that's what this is." He remembered Cha's expression from long ago, when he had told her that Jinwoo was the one who saved everyone on Jeju Island. That look now made perfect sense. He turned back to the call. "Turn off all surveillance cameras in the gym. Log the inspection today as a routine check." Then he leaned back into his chair. The rumbling from below caused the building to briefly tremble. The chairman felt the vibration and chuckled to himself. "They're enjoying their youth," he said with a soft smile. Back in the gym, the fight had reached its conclusion. To Jinwoo's surprise, Igris was kneeling, defeated. Cha stood tall, breathing heavily but victorious. She turned to Jinwoo and asked, "Was that Black Knight your strongest summon?" She then asked Jinwoo, "You said you'd summon your strongest, didn't you? Please summon him now." Hearing that, Jinwoo replied, "You might get hurt," but she insisted. As she spoke, a dark aura emerged behind Jinwoo as he summoned Baru. He asked her, "Are you sure you'll be okay?" Jinwoo understood something very clearly. Most shadow soldiers were weaker than their living counterparts. But Baru was an exception. Unlike others, Baru had been created for a single purpose: to slaughter hunters. If he fought Cha Hae-in with his full strength, her chances of victory would be almost non-existent. With that in mind, Jinwoo ordered him to defeat her, but without causing harm. The moment the command was given, Baru's aura erupted. A wave of mana exploded outward, shattering lights and windows throughout the building. Cha Hae-in staggered for a moment under the sheer force of it, astonished that Jinwoo had once faced this terrifying being himself. Baru then completed his monstrous transformation, ready for battle. But before the clash could escalate, Jinwoo commanded him to sheath his claws. He warned that life would become troublesome if Cha was injured during this test. Startled by the reminder, Baru immediately retracted his weapons. Spotting her chance, Cha lunged forward with a swift attack. Yet in the blink of an eye, Baru was already behind her. Recognizing the same movement from earlier, she countered with a decisive strike, determined not to be deceived again. But her sword never landed. Baru caught it effortlessly in one hand. Calmly, he offered to show the difference in their strength if Jinwoo allowed him to fight without inflicting harm. Cha refused to relent. She pressed forward, swinging again and again, yet Baru slipped past her attacks with frightening ease. He wasn't even moving from his position, simply dodging at close range. Realization dawned on her. This was a gap in speed and power she couldn't hope to close. Then, without warning, Bruce stepped right up to her face and released a piercing scream. The shock wave blasted her off her feet, sending her skidding back across the ground. From the sidelines, Jin Wu silently concluded that the outcome was already decided. Still, Hae-in rose to her feet, unwilling to yield. She declared she could continue, even after seeing the overwhelming difference. Jinwoo frowned, questioning what drove her stubborn resolve. Recklessness didn't suit her, not after recognizing Baru's true power. Yet he couldn't ignore the truth. Baru was no ordinary shadow. He was intelligent, merciless, and born to kill. Jinwoo could still feel that killing intent seeping from him like a blade at the throat. Watching Cha's stance, Jinwoo worried. If she tried to gamble on a weak point, he could only hope she wouldn't make a fatal mistake. As the clash dragged on, Baru reminded Hae-in of a simple truth. Every creature instinctively knows whether it is predator or prey. To prove his point, he lunged forward with deadly speed, declaring that prey defying a predator could never be tolerated. Cha reacted just in time, dodging his first strike, but Baru immediately prepared another. In that instant, he noticed her gathering mana for a counterattack. She released the blast with precision, landing a direct hit on his shoulder. Yet the blow barely scratched him. Baru's hardened exoskeleton absorbed the impact and reduced her weapon to shattered fragments. But this was exactly what Cha had planned. With her remaining strength, she prepared her strongest skill. She knew she only had enough mana for a single attempt, one strike that had to count. Summoning the radiant sword of light, she pierced through the layers of Baru's armor, finally breaking past his defense. Alarm surged through Jinwoo as he sensed something dangerous awakening within Baru. A buried command, etched deep in his very existence by the Insect Queen, stirred once more. Annihilate all enemies. The words echoed through Baru's mind as he branded Hae-in an enemy and shifted into pure killing intent. Jinwoo's order to stop went unanswered. Cha closed her eyes, accepting what seemed like the end. A deafening explosion shook the battlefield. When she opened her eyes again, she realized she was still alive. Jinwoo had intervened in time, shielding her from certain death. Baru snapped back to his senses, recoiling in horror at his own loss of control. Dropping to his knees, he begged Jinwoo for forgiveness. Jinwoo, however, turned his attention back to Cha. He questioned her resolve, asking why she was risking her life for nothing more than an entrance test to a nameless guild. A hunter of her caliber had no reason to gamble everything on something so trivial. Then, almost to himself, he wondered if her determination stemmed from a personal interest in him. The thought left Cha momentarily stunned, while Jinwoo admitted inwardly that he still could not read her true intentions. And then, in a voice so soft he almost missed it, Hae-in whispered her answer. She admitted that perhaps his guess was not entirely wrong. The scene shifts across the ocean to America, inside the headquarters of the Federal Bureau of Hunters. Seated at the top floor, Director David Brennan listens intently as Michael Connor and Mrs. Selner report back from their meeting with Jinwoo. Brennan presses them for answers, demanding to know why they failed to convince such a powerful hunter to join the United States. Michael explains that according to Mrs. Selner's vision, Jinwoo is unlike ordinary awakened. She describes him as one of the kings, a title she reserves only for the strongest of the strong. The director is stunned, asking if that means Jinwoo rivals a national-level hunter. Mrs. Selner begins to describe what she witnessed when she looked into his mind. Normally, awakened hunters channel their strength from a place known as the other side. The bond between hunter and source appears to her as threads of light, sometimes so bright that they blaze like radiant kings. But when she gazed into Jin Woo's eyes, she saw no such bond. Instead, what looked back at her was a boundless darkness. To her, Jin Woo was darkness itself. The director quickly questions whether she is implying Jin Woo is evil. But Mrs. Selner shakes her head. She clarifies that she is not speaking of morality, but of origin. Jin Wu does not rely on a connection like other awakened. His power is his own, untethered and unbound by the limitations of the other side. In theory, it means his strength has no ceiling. Michael, shaken, realizes what she is saying. Jin Wu can continue to grow without limit. Mrs. Selner confirms this with grim certainty. Director Brennan rises from his chair, thanking Mrs. Selner for her insight. He then motions for Michael to follow him as they descend into the depths of the bureau, all the way to level 24. Inside the elevator, Brennan recalls the first S-rank gate in history, the catastrophic breach that consumed the West Coast. Michael remembers it well, the deadliest disaster in hunter history. Brennan explains that during that raid, America recruited the strongest hunters from across the globe with the promise of untold rewards. Only 5 survived, and those survivors became legends, granted authority equal to entire nations. From that day forward, they were known as national-level hunters. Among the horrors of that tragedy, one creature stood above the rest: Kamish, the inextinguishable flame. A dragon so powerful that it slaughtered hundreds of elite hunters on its own. Yet from that disaster came an unexpected reward. As the elevator doors open, Brennan invites Michael to witness it with his own eyes. They enter a cold storage chamber deep below ground. Inside, preserved and sealed away, rests a rune stone taken from Kamish's corpse. Brennan explains that for 8 long years, no mage-class hunter has risen to the rank of national level. And so, this rune stone has waited here in silence, its immense power seeking a worthy heir. With solemn pride, Brennan declares that Kamish, even in death, will bestow a gift upon their great nation once more. The story shifts to Jinwoo, who is in the shower, staring at his reflection in the mirror. He still can't believe that someone actually confessed interest in him. He thinks to himself that ever since his reawakening, his appearance has changed. He has grown taller, his physique has become sharper, and his skin has cleared up completely. He wonders if it's all because of the passive effects from the skill Will to Survive, which restores any damage to his body. But even so, he questions, am I really that attractive? Later, he walks over to his sister Gina's room and suddenly asks her how she would rate him. Confused, she replies by asking in terms of what. Jinwoo clarifies that he means in terms of appearance. Gina looks at him like he's lost his mind and says that, to her, he just looks like a bum. Annoyed by her blunt answer, Jinwoo sarcastically thanks her for the biased opinion. Gina begins kicking at him in irritation, but Jinwoo warns her to be careful or she might break her leg. He reminds her not to forget who her older brother is, questioning how someone like her even managed to get into school. She fires back, claiming that she's actually at the top of her class. The conversation shifts as Jinwoo tells his sister about his plan to form a new guild. Gina teasingly asks if that means he'll be the big boss now. While she gossips about it over the phone with a friend, Jinwoo wonders out loud about a possible name for his guild. His first idea is Solo Play Guild. Gina immediately shoots down the name, pointing out that it doesn't make sense. Since Jinwoo commands a whole army of shadow soldiers, he isn't exactly a solo player. Realizing she has a point, Jinwoo asks for her suggestion. Gina proposes the name Agent Guild, explaining that the character means to move forward. Jinwoo finds himself actually considering the name seriously. The scene transitions to Hunter Hae-in's home. She is lying in bed, tossing and turning as she recalls the events of earlier. She can't stop cringing at herself, admitting that she basically blurted out her feelings for Jinwoo. Embarrassed, she thinks he must see her as crazy. But then again, she reasons, it was only natural to feel drawn to someone who saved her life. Still, she admits to herself that things don't feel okay at all. As she reflects, another memory resurfaces, something she experienced while unconscious. In that vision, she remembers drifting into darkness until a hand reached out and pulled her back. The voice that called to her belonged to Min Byung-gu, the healer who had sacrificed himself. In her vision, Byung-gu pleaded with her to pass on a message. He told her to warn Jinwoo that he must be cautious of the dangerous power that exists within him. Startled by the memory, Hae-in suddenly sits upright, realizing that she had completely forgotten until now. The next day, the focus shifts to the Night Guild's headquarters. Park Jong-soo listens as his vice guildmaster, Yoon Kyung-tae, reports that a massive gate has appeared in their territory. The association has rated it dangerously high, though not quite S-rank. Park Jong-soo frowns, saying that if the raid goes wrong, their entire team could be wiped out. Kyung-tae adds that if it truly were an S-rank, abandoning it would have been the only logical choice, since they lack the manpower. But because they are one of the top 5 guilds in Korea, public opinion would turn against them if they ignored the gate. On top of that, the Fame Guild would surely swoop in and seize the opportunity. This infuriates Park Jong-soo, who slams his hand down, asking if they're supposed to simply hand over a gate that appeared right in their backyard. Kyung-tae, intimidated, insists that he was only presenting the situation. At that moment, another guild officer, Yoo Jin-hae, speaks up, suggesting they could form an alliance with another guild. Jong-soo hesitates, pointing out that asking for outside help would make it obvious they don't think they can clear the gate alone. Their reputation could take a major hit. But then Jin-hae reminds them of someone, Hunter Sung Jinwoo. After a moment of silence, Jong-soo admits that working with Jinwoo could actually be an advantage. The public might even see it as a bold move if they were to join forces with him. He asks what Jinwoo has been doing lately. Kyung-tae reports that Jinwoo recently cleared a gate that opened in the middle of a highway, but otherwise has been keeping a low profile. He asks if Jong-soo would like him to arrange contact, but Jong-soo shakes his head. Something this important shouldn't be handled over the phone. Instead, he orders that they go meet Jinwoo directly. The story then shifts back to Jinwoo, who is in the middle of another discussion with Jinho. Jinwoo tells him that he's leaning toward naming their guild Ajin. Jinho nods enthusiastically, thinking that anything is better than solo play guild. With the name decided, Jinwoo remarks that all they need now is one last member to officially form the guild. Curious, Jinho asks what happened with Hunter Cha. Jinwoo replies that she isn't quite the person he's been searching for. Shocked, Jinho protests, pointing out that Cha Hae-in is a powerful S-rank hunter with an excellent record and undeniable beauty. From his perspective, she's the perfect candidate. But Jinwoo calmly explains that what he's looking for is someone different, not just strength or fame, but someone trustworthy and uninterested in political guild activities. Jinho thinks for a moment and says that he knows a few people who might fit that description. Before they can continue, there's a knock at the door. Jinwoo rises, half expecting to see Hae-in again. But when he opens the door, he's surprised to find Park Jong-soo, Yoon Kyung-tae, and Yoo Jin-hee representing the Night Guild. After polite introductions, they sit down and explain why they've come. Jong-soo shows Jinwoo a video recording of the gate in question. The footage reveals a massive structure radiating enormous waves of magic energy. Jinwoo asks if it's an S-rank gate, but Jong-soo clarifies that it's close, one of the largest ever seen in Busan. Hearing this, Jinwoo begins to wonder to himself if he should reach out to an old acquaintance, reminiscing about the last time he was in Busan and treated to sashimi. Park Young-soo explained the real reason for his visit. The association refused to issue a raid permit because the Night Guild had no S-rank hunter on staff. He asked Jinwoo to join the raid so the guild could legally claim the gate and lead the operation. In the background, Young Yun-tae distractedly considered asking Jinwoo for an autograph. Park then put an offer on the table. Normally, an S-rank hunter took a 10% share for participating in a raid, but he was willing to increase that to 20% for Jinwoo. Jinwoo countered immediately, demanding an even split, 50-50, and added a condition. He would help only if the Night Guild formally allied with his new group, not just with him as an individual. He mentioned that he had just established a guild under the name Jin Guild. Park tried to bargain back, proposing a 40-60 split instead. Jinwoo made it clear he wasn't negotiating out of need. He wasn't the one who required help. Park reassessed the young hunter and concluded he was no pushover after all, then accepted Jinwoo's terms on one condition. Jinwoo would personally handle the dungeon boss. With the deal settled, Park reminded Jinwoo the gate had appeared a few days earlier and insisted the raid must begin by tomorrow at the latest. Park invited Jinwoo to leave with them immediately, but Jinwoo declined, saying he would meet them the next day after finishing some errands. Mid-conversation, Jinwoo's phone rang. He excused himself to take the call. On the line was his mother. They arranged to have dinner together that evening. The following day, a huge crowd gathered near the gate in Busan, mainly hunters from the Night Guild preparing for the raid. Park Young-soo, already armored and waiting, checked the time and worried that Jinwoo might be late, noting they would depart in 5 minutes. Meanwhile, Jinwoo prepared at home, glanced at the sky, and wondered if his sister Gina had brought an umbrella, then used Shadow Exchange to teleport directly to the site. The scene cut to Gina's school, where students complained about an art teacher who unloaded his duties onto them. Entering a dusty, long-unused classroom, one student suddenly noticed something unusual, a sealed gate tucked into a corner. He reassured his friends that the gate was safe while sealed and reminded them only licensed hunters could enter once it opened, estimating it would take about a week to activate. As the students talked, tiny cracks began to spider across the gate's seal, a sign they failed to notice. Without warning, a hand burst through the fissure and grabbed the head of the boy standing closest. He fought and screamed for help, but the creature crushed his skull in front of his classmates. The remaining students watched in horror as monsters poured out of the gate. Hunters acting as nearby scouts felt the rush of excitement at the scent of blood, but they suppressed their instincts and prioritized the mission. One of the creatures sniffed out human presence and told its companion that the building was as complex as a castle, ordering the others to be summoned. The monster declared it would slaughter all humans there, fortify their position, and then begin the real hunt. As it stepped into the corridor, the beast pounced on students before they could react. Cut back to the raid staging area. Jinwoo arrived and remarked that the gate was even larger in person. He surveyed the assembled teams, mining and collection crews alongside the assault force, and counted 13 A-rank hunters and 20 B-rank hunters. He thought to himself that the guild's roster of A-rankers matched the reputation of a top house. Before he could settle, a swarm of guild hunters bombarded him with questions about his abilities and whether he would lead the raid. Uncomfortable with the sudden attention, Jinwoo froze until young Yerim stepped forward to quiet the group. Yerim introduced herself as an A-rank healer assigned to the Night Guild's assault team and tactfully removed the pressure from Jinwoo. Park Young-soo then stepped up to address the gathered hunters and explain the plan. Park announced he would lead the raid operation. Several members protested, arguing that Jinwoo, as an S-rank, should be the one to lead. Park clarified Jinwoo's role. Jinwoo would be assigned to the rear to secure the team and protect their withdrawal. Not as an insult, but as a tactical assignment. Some hunters bristled, offended at the implication they needed protection, and tension briefly flared. Park smiled wryly and admitted their blunt talk was simply the guild's atmosphere, a show of confidence more than disrespect. Jinwoo accepted that interpretation and remarked that such swagger meant they believed in themselves. With roles defined and grudges kept in check, the raid party closed ranks and proceeded into the dungeon. The scene opens inside the Hunters Association Emergency Call Center, where an operator answers a frantic incoming call. A terrified girl reports a dungeon break at her school and tells the operator she is hiding in a bathroom. She explains that she and her friends were suddenly attacked when monsters poured out of a sealed gate. The operator reassures her that hunters are already on their way and urges her to stay calm. The operator asks for a description of the attackers. The girl says they looked familiar from television, green-skinned creatures. Hearing that detail, the operator's voice tightens. She realizes the monsters are orcs and warns the girl they can track prey by scent. Before the operator can finish, too late, an orc finds the caller, and the frantic screams end the line. Back at the school, students stream out of classrooms as orcs hunt down anyone trapped inside. Some students manage to escape through the school gate, while others unfortunately became prey to the orcs. Two orcs compare notes. They lament losing half their prey, but shrug it off. There are still plenty of victims. One orc explains they block the main escape route and will sweep upward to clear the remaining floors. A group of students barricades themselves in a classroom with desks and chairs, hoping to hold out. Their barricade proves useless. An orc smashes the door and staggers through, blood matted across its body. Panicked, one student bolts for a window, but as he reaches it, two red eyes lock onto him, and an axe cleaves his head before he can react. More orcs flood the room, surrounding the terrified survivors. One orc detects magical energy in the crowd and tells its leader there is a witch among the students. The orc leader orders them to eliminate the magic user first. At the back of the classroom, Gina and Han Songyi huddle together. Gina calls desperately for her brother. Han Songyi, though only an E rank, declares she's awakened and prepares to fight, while Gina tries to hold her back. An orc swings an axe toward Gina, certain the smell of power is hers, and declares she must die. The girls close their eyes, bracing for the blow. But when Gina opens them, she finds a hulking orc standing between her and the attacker, having stopped the strike. Recognizing the protection, Gina realizes her brother had stationed these soldiers around her for safety. With a single punch, the large orc sends the attacker flying through the ceiling, leaving the remaining monsters stunned and three massive orcs converging to guard Gina. Cut back to the raid team inside the dungeon. Park Young-soo suddenly alerts the party. There's an ogre. A towering, two-headed ogre materializes before them, swinging a massive weapon. Park conjures a protective barrier and absorbs the beast's full strike. The shield holds. He orders Young Yuntai to close in on the ogre's face. Yuntai runs in, manages a risky move that blinds the creature, and shouts for everyone to strike while it's vulnerable. The assault team charges, hacking at the beast while mages rain magic upon it until the ogre is torn apart and scorched. After the kill, Park calls for a regroup and admits they are facing more than he expected. Park warns Jinwoo that encountering a twin-headed ogre this early is bad news. He asks if Jinwoo knows the ogre's other name. Jinwoo replies that twin-headed ogres are called gravekeepers. Park grimly confirms the implication. If gravekeepers appear, an army of undead is likely nearby. Young Yuntai frets that he jinxed them, and the hunters debate whether to keep pushing. But then they notice something strange. The undead do not charge. Instead, they stand perfectly still, staring at the hunters with cold, patient eyes. The team instinctively takes a step back, unsettled by the unusual behavior. Jinwoo, who had expected a brutal fight in this high-tier, A-rank dungeon, senses something off and realizes an urgent matter requires his attention. He tells Park he must leave immediately. Park protests that, without Jinwoo, the raid could become dangerous. Jinwoo answers Park calmly. If they are worried, he will call someone equally reliable to watch over them, then makes his decision to take action. The assembled hunters freeze as a familiar monster appears, and they catch a terrifying recognition. It is the same ant-type creature from the Jeju Island raid. Jinwoo cuts through the formalities and then orders Beru to protect the humans and handle the monsters as he sees fit. Beru answers with a fierce cry and proceeds to slaughter the surrounding monsters, leaving the hunters stunned at the display. When the slaughter ends, Jinwoo tells the guild that the shadow soldiers he left behind will assist them. 20 of those shadows will be more than enough for this dungeon. He prepares to depart, but the hunters plead, "Are you really going to leave after unleashing your shadows?" Jinwoo, annoyed, offers to dismiss the shadows before he goes if it will make them feel safer, but says he doubts that would help. His final check shows Shadow Exchange still has 1 hour and 42 minutes remaining, so Jinwoo begins to run for the exit. Park stands in stunned disbelief as Jinwoo rushes away. While sprinting, Jinwoo notes he keeps receiving faint signals from the shadow soldiers he had left with Gina. A nagging, uneasy feeling builds in him. He encounters a line of undead blocking his path. Furious, he orders them out of the way. To his surprise, the undead bow and kneel, clearing a path. Jinwoo wonders briefly whether they recognize him as a necromancer able to command the dead, but he pushes the thought aside and presses onward. Reaching the gate, he summons Kaizel, his wyvern, and mounts it. Hunters watching gasp in recognition. Jinwoo commands Kaizel to fly straight to his sister and boosts the wyvern's speed and strength by 50% so they can reach her as quickly as possible. The scene shifts to the school where Jin Woo's shadow orcs are cutting down the invading orc monsters. They methodically clear the classroom and secure the space, rescuing the remaining students as they go. The students stand frozen in disbelief. They cannot fathom that what look like monsters have just saved their lives. Jin moves forward and approaches one of the towering shadow orcs, searching desperately for any sign of her older brother. She begins to call for Jin Woo, but the shadow orc raises a hand to stop her and points toward the doorway. Heavy footsteps begin to echo through the corridor. Cut to another location. An orc warlord sits upon a crude throne while a subordinate kneels and delivers urgent news. The subordinate reports that the final restrictions have been lifted and the path into the human world is now open. The throne-bound warlord proclaims himself the chieftain of the Red Blade tribe and exudes confidence that nothing will stand in his way. The subordinate adds that high orc warriors are assisting the humans at the school, an unexpected complication for the invasion. Irritated, the chieftain asks for the exact number of those opposing forces. The reply comes back: 3. Hearing this, the chieftain sneers in contempt and grows enraged at the thought that his foes could be held by so small a force, judging the situation pitiful. He rises, grips his weapon, and orders his followers forward. He intends to lead the assault personally and turn the way ahead into slaughter. Meanwhile, deep inside the dungeon, insect-type monsters swarmed around the strike team. Anxiety spread through the hunters as the creatures closed in. The hunters begged their leader not to stay. They feared that if the monsters marked them as enemies, the team would be wiped out. Their leader, Park Jong-soo, refused to abandon the mission. He argued they could not simply withdraw now. Pulling out would invite chaos outside and make a mess of what waited beyond the gate. At that moment, a massive shadow approached. Baru had arrived. Seeing Baru so close unnerved Park Jong-soo, but he forced himself to remain composed and ordered the team to move forward. In an instant, Baru blinked, vanishing from one spot and reappearing directly before Park Jong-soo. The sudden appearance startled the leader, knocking him to the ground. Without exchanging words, Baru tossed an object toward the fallen hunter and then turned and walked away. The other hunters rushed to Park Jong-soo's side, worried and ready to follow the strange shadow. They asked if he was all right and whether they should pursue the monsters. Park Jong-soo waved them off and told them to examine what Baru had left behind first. When they inspected the object, their faces drained of color. It was the severed head of the Death Knight. Staring at it, Park Jong-soo realized the implication. Whatever had toppled the Death Knight had killed a top-ranked foe in an instant. He muttered that the thing they had just seen was far stronger than they had imagined. He asked if anyone still wanted to retreat. When he looked up, however, he found he was the only one still hesitating. The other hunters had already scrambled to follow Baru and the summoned creatures deeper into the dungeon. Back at the school, Jin Woo's high orc shadow soldiers moved to shield the students, confronting the attacking orcs. The Orc Chieftain proved far stronger than the soldiers expected, pressing the attack despite their effort to hold the line. The chieftain boasted that orc tattoos mark victory, each one a tally of fallen foes, and he taunted the high orcs as he advanced. One of the high orc shadows managed to block the chieftain's strike, a move that briefly impressed him. He acknowledged the block but dismissed their chances of winning. With brutal force, he sliced into the defenders, expecting to break them. Yet the shadow soldiers only fell and reformed, rising again as if nothing had happened. The chieftain froze in confusion. Each cut that should have ended a soldier instead saw them regenerate. He realized this was no ordinary opponent and wondered if some spell protected them. At the same time, a different danger began to trouble him internally. Voices whispered in his mind, urging violence against humans. The compulsion grew stronger and unnerved him. Putting pieces together, the chieftain inferred the soldiers were acting under someone's control. If magic animated the warriors, then destroying the controller would end the interference. He scanned the classroom for the source of power, and his eyes landed on Jin Wu, hiding among the shadows. Convinced she was the key, he ordered his minions to seize her while the high orcs were briefly vulnerable during regeneration. The orc attackers pressed forward and, bit by bit, overwhelmed the three shadow soldiers guarding the students. Panic spread through the room. The chieftain grabbed Jin Wu by the mouth and lifted her into the air, certain he had found the one responsible for the magic. He declared that he could sense the power and that his suspicion was confirmed. Jin'ah trembled with fear as he prepared to finish her. Then something outside the window cut through his focus. A massive shadow descended from above, its presence so overwhelming that the chieftain staggered back in shock. He barked at his followers to brace themselves. Something terrifying had arrived. Before he could react further, Jin Wu crashed through the building, the impact sending the chieftain flying. The classroom erupted as the threat was interrupted. Jin Wu moved to Jin'ah's side, gently calming her and reassuring her she was safe. The chieftain struggled to his feet, now staring in fear at Jin Wu and the looming figure of Kaisel at his side. The chieftain tried to proclaim himself, Garrick Daruko, leader of the Red Blade tribe, but Jin Wu cut him off without a word, silencing the boast. Jin Wu swept the room with quick checks. He hugged Jin'ah tightly and whispered an apology for arriving late, then asked Han Song-yi if she was all right. She shook her head weakly. Noticing a red mark marring Jin'ah's face, Jin Wu's calm hardened into anger. Without hesitation, he summoned Igris and other shadows to guard the children. He assigned Igris to protect Sung Jin'ah, then ordered his shadow soldiers to escort the students downstairs to safety. An orc tried to flee in the confusion, but Jin Wu snapped at him to stay put. Once the students were evacuated, the orc leader stepped forward to confront Jin Wu. The leader realized that the immortal high orcs were not creatures of their kind, but soldiers under someone's command, and demanded to know who Jin Wu was and how he spoke their language. Jin Wu gave no answer. The orcs signaled his troops to attack. The orcs charged. The first raised an axe, but Jin Wu caught the weapon hand mid-swing, crushing the fingers and slamming the attacker to the ground. He finished the strike with a stomp that ended the orc instantly. Two more orcs lunged, only to be stopped mid-air by Jin Wu's dominator's touch. He crushed them with a single, merciless motion. Enraged, the remaining orcs swarmed him, but Jin Wu cut through them without mercy until only one combatant remained, pinned to the wall by dominator's touch and trembling. Jin Wu seized the last orc by the mouth and demanded to know why they wanted to slaughter humans. The creature, terrified, confessed that voices spoke inside their heads, ordering them to kill. Jin Wu narrowed his eyes and asked if the voices continued when the orc stood near him. The beast stammered and begged for mercy, but could not answer clearly. Jin Wu tightened his grip and demanded a response. When none came, he called forth his dagger. He observed that, in the orc's eyes, he was not even human. Yet Jin Wu said he would grant forgiveness. His forgiveness came with a warning: it would not be painless. Back in the dungeon, Hae-in tried to stop one of the summoned shadow ants from devouring a fallen creature, scolding it for eating something rare and valuable. She warned the ant not to waste it. The ant scratched her shoulder and continued feeding. Hae-in flinched from the pain, but a massive shadow, Baru, moved in and began to heal her injuries. Hae-in watched, surprised. The summoned shadow's healing felt more potent than her own magic, and she could not help but wonder at the difference. The party pushed forward into the boss chamber and froze. A monstrous figure hovered at the center, encircled by many undead minions. The hunters identified the foe instantly. It was an arch-lich flanked by 10 death knights, a combination no ordinary A-rank team should face. Park Jong-soo remembered a past disaster in China. The Gold Dragon Guild had once been wiped out by an arch-lich, a catastrophe that had led to a dungeon break. He felt the weight of that memory and knew how dire their odds were. As he considered their options, a lookout warned that more undead were closing in from the rear. Park Jong-soo reacted fast. He ordered Hae-in to seal the entrance with a magical barrier. She erected the ward and warned the group she could only sustain it for about 5 minutes. While the barrier held, Park Jong-soo noticed Baru moving straight toward the arch-lich, unbothered by the surrounding death knights. The arch-lich, recognizing the shadow, demanded to know why the monarch's own army had come to attack it. The boss could not fathom being targeted by the monarch's personal soldiers. Baru's reply was curt and mocking. The shadows had been chosen by the monarch, and the lich had not. The arch-lich refused to accept this and declared it would report the affront to the monarch itself. Baru showed no patience for rhetoric. With a single, decisive move, he leapt forward, grabbed the glowing essence lodged in the lich's chest and crushed it in his hand. The arch-lich screamed as his core was destroyed. Instantly, the undead soldiers animating the dungeon began to collapse and vanish. The boss's hold over them had been broken. The hunters stood in shocked silence. Baru had slain an archlich in one blow, a feat far beyond what they imagined possible from a summoned shadow. After the victory, Baru roared triumphantly. Park Jong-soo, watching, recalibrated his estimate of Sung Jinwoo's power. Even if Jinwoo could not control every summon at once without draining himself, commanding a portion of that army still constituted a force stronger than a major guild. Back at the school, the Hunter Association arrived to secure the scene and take control of the aftermath. Sung Jin Wu sat inside a car with Chairman Go Gun-hee as the chairman briefed him on the rescue. The chairman reported that 213 students who had fled quickly were safe. 10 more had been pulled from the building, and the remaining students were unaccounted for. He then showed Jinwoo a graph on his phone charting gate appearances in the area over the past 6 months. The chairman explained that gate incidents were spiking worldwide and that the number of newly awakened hunters was rising alongside them. In short, gates and hunters were both increasing. Jinwoo asked why the chairman had asked to meet him that day. In response, Go Gun-hee handed over a stack of documents and indicated that official requests to meet Jinwoo had arrived from multiple countries: Japan, the United States, China, Russia, France, the United Kingdom, Germany, and even several nations in the Middle East. The chairman added that some foreign parties had likely already attempted contact through unofficial channels. He reminded Jinwoo that while the association could honor Jinwoo's request to protect his personal information, it could not legally prevent foreign governments or organizations from making contact. Go Gun-hee urged Jinwoo to consider staying in Korea, arguing that the country would struggle to adapt to these fast-moving, global changes without its strongest hunters present. As the car neared a hospital, the chairman told Jinwoo that his younger sister, Sung Jin-ah, had been taken there for treatment. Preparing to leave, Jinwoo listened as Go Gun-hee pledged the association's full support if he chose to remain inside Korea, promising whatever resources were necessary. The chairman emphasized the stakes. The nation had already lost 3 of its 10 S-rank hunters and could not afford another loss. Hearing the warning, Jinwoo stated that, from then on, he preferred to enter high-rank gates alone and asked if the chairman could arrange that. Surprised, the chairman asked whether that preference explained Jinwoo's recent formation of a personal guild, effectively a one-man assault squad. He thought it over and admitted that, while difficult to accommodate, it was not impossible. Fast forward, Yoo Jin-ho is on the phone trying to recruit a family member to join the new guild. The person on the other end is his cousin, Yoo Suk-yong, an A-rank hunter. At first, she is skeptical. She questions joining a guild that hasn't even been officially formed and jokes that Jin-ho might be getting scammed by some shady recruiter. She also weighs the alternative of becoming an ambassador for her father's guild. Everything changes the moment Jin-ho mentions who is forming the guild: Sung Jin-woo. The name immediately piques her interest and makes the offer real. When she arrives, Jin-ho introduces her to the group: Yoo Suk-yong, A-rank hunter, and his cousin. Her excitement to meet Jin-woo fills the room. Jin-ho teases that she's the real celebrity in the meeting. Sung Jin-woo watches, quietly wondering if she really is as ranked as she claims. They sit down to talk. Jinwoo warns Suk-yong that joining his guild will draw attention and asks whether she is prepared for the fallout. She answers confidently that anything is preferable to getting mixed up with Yoo Jin-sung. Jinwoo looks puzzled and asks who she means. Jin-ho clarifies. Yoo Jin-sung is his older brother. Jinwoo remarks about the brother's bad reputation for personality, and the small group laughs off the awkwardness. After the brief banter, Suk-yong asks if she can take a selfie with Jinwoo to post online. Cut to the Hunter Association building. A stormy political scene unfolds as Senator Nam Jung-wook confronts Chairman Go Gun-hee over the chairman's plea to let Sung Jin-woo enter high-level dungeons alone. Nam argues that the special regulation was effectively created the moment Jinwoo set up his private guild and calls the arrangement blatant preferential treatment. He insists the association exists for all hunters, not for the convenience of one individual, and demands a formal explanation. Chairman Go Gun-hee concedes the basic point: yes, it appears preferential, but he immediately lays out the practical reasoning behind the compromise. He frames the choice starkly. When a dangerous dungeon breaks open, would the country rather deploy 20 A-rank hunters or authorize a single proven assault squad led by Jin Wu. The question forces officials to weigh efficiency against principle. The chairman warns that guilds and foreign powers are already desperate to recruit Jin Wu. If Korea refuses to accommodate him, they risk losing their strongest asset to outside interests. He invokes past mistakes, reminding the room of when Hunter Hwang Dong-soo left for America, and presses the senators to consider the real cost. When another S-rank gate appears on Korean soil, who will be there to save them? Back in the city, Hae-in stared at her phone and froze. The picture on the screen showed Jin Wu beside Yoo Soo-yeon, and the sight made her tremble before she let out a frustrated scream. Fast forward, Jin Wu and Yoo Jin-ho stood before a massive gate preparing for the new guild's first official raid. Yoo Jin-ho marveled at the sight. He had never seen anything like this. The gate towered above them. Reporters swarmed immediately, peppering them with questions. Cameras flashed and voices shouted, even asking about Jin Woo's relationship with Yoo Soo-yeon. Jin Wu turned to Chief Woo Jin-chul and asked why his personal details hadn't stayed private as promised. Chief Wu explained that while the association could protect private records, it could not prevent the public from discovering a gate's location once word spread. Social media exposure was beyond the association's control. Jin Wu remembered the Instagram photo and the leaks it could cause. As preparations continued, Yoo Jin-ho suggested hiring a mining and collection team. He didn't think he could manage the operation alone. Jin Wu reassured him that he needn't worry. His shadows would handle collection and cleanup. Chief Wu checked the mana signatures of Jin Wu's shadow soldiers and watched in astonishment. Every shadow registered at B rank or higher. He observed that a squad like this more than qualified for a raid permit into an A-rank gate. The sight of Jin Wu's organized high-rank shadows undercut the complaints about preferential treatment. Practical capability was making the argument moot. Chief Wu added that he had orders from the chairman to observe the raid in person and confirm whether the decision to allow a solo assault squad was safe. He asked if he could accompany them that day as the inspection team's representative. Jin Wu smirked and asked whether the chief would be all right inside with them. Chief Wu looked puzzled by the retort. A few minutes into the raid, Chief Woo Jin-chul stood sweating as he watched Jin Woo's shadow soldiers tear through A-rank threats with terrifying ease. The foremost monsters were Nagas, elite A-rank serpentine foes, creatures that normally give even top hunters trouble. Yet Jin Woo's army overwhelmed them, their rapid regeneration making the assault look unstoppable. Woo's eyes locked onto the blood-red commander at the front, Igris. The knight moved like a war machine, cutting down enemies with brutal efficiency. He thought to himself that Igris was unusually powerful. He also noticed flashes of lightning magic among the shadows, a skill usually reserved for the highest-tier mages, and wondered whether some of these summons were even stronger than a normal A-rank. If he faced one of them one-on-one, would he stand a chance? As the battle raged, Wu spotted a small, ant-like shadow gnawing on a corpse. Jin Wu stepped in, kicked the creature toward the ceiling, and scolded it for eating valuable remains. He then turned to the lower-ranked shadows and ordered them back to work, mining mana crystals and collecting corpses. Watching Jin Wu manage the fight while overseeing extraction, Wu realized this was more than a one-man assault squad. Jin Wu was simultaneously clearing the dungeon, retrieving valuable remains, and gathering mana. One operator doing the job of a full team. When the minions fell silent, the true boss finally appeared. Jin Wu called out orders. Those still mining could stay. The rest should return. Chief Wu asked why he'd sent so many shadows away. Didn't they have enough strength to finish the boss by themselves? Jin Wu summoned his daggers and replied that relying too much on his shadows would dull his own edge. He needed to keep his combat instincts sharp. Then, moving with impossible speed, he ran up the boss's scaled body and, before it could react, split its face in two with a single swing. Wu stood speechless. He had never seen anything like that in all his years as a hunter. The boss fell, and Jin Wu's status updated. He gained a level and several skills improved, including Shadow Exchange. The cooldown on Shadow Exchange decreased by 1 hour. Jin Wu realized the pattern. Each level up shaved an hour off the skill's cooldown. If he kept leveling the ability, he could travel with far fewer limitations. Exactly what he needed to protect his mother and sister. Chief Wu stared at the corpse and thought about the scales. Nagas had hide tough enough for shields or armor, yet Jin Wu had sliced through them with only 2 daggers. He watched, still trying to process the sheer lethality on display. Jin Wu performed shadow extraction on the fallen boss. A new shadow began to form from the corpse, and a notification confirmed that the shadow's power had been enhanced, and that it would start at level 13th. Observing the newly born soldier, Jin Wu assessed that its rank matched that of Tusk. It was as strong as the original creature had been in life, even though the summoned form was smaller. Despite the reduced size, it radiated an enormous mana signature. Jin Wu judged the new summon to be roughly Tusk's equal and accepted the prompt to name it. He christened the soldier Jima. The cave trembled afterward. Yu Jin Ho warned Jin Wu that they needed to leave, and Jin Wu paused a moment longer, wondering what to do about the fallen boss's remains. After a short wait, Tusk reappeared through the gate carrying the boss's corpse over his shoulder. Reporters outside immediately recognized Tusk as one of Jin Wu's summons and swarmed to take pictures. As the entire squad exited the dungeon, Chief Wu looked shell-shocked, overwhelmed by everything he'd seen inside. Later, he sat across from Chairman Gogun Hee and gave a full report on the raid. The chairman listened intently and admitted he understood why even a veteran like Wu would be shaken. Wu summed up bluntly, what he'd witnessed wasn't merely a raid, it had been a massacre. After Wu left, the chairman sat and thought, realizing the implication. Hunters in Korea, and across the world, were about to see the balance shift. A new dominant force had arrived on the field. The story shifts to Japan, where an unnatural sight hangs above the city. A gigantic red gate looms in the sky. Citizens stop and stare in confusion, powerless to understand what they are witnessing. Conversations spread quickly. People remark on the sudden appearance of the red gate and the alarming spike in high-level gates across the country. Officials call an emergency meeting and summon every major guild to decide how to respond. The urgency is plain. Japan recently lost 7 S-rank hunters during the Jeju Island raid, including Goto Ryuji, and the nation no longer has the manpower to handle another S-rank disaster on its own. Remaining S-rank members of the Draw Sword Guild walk into the conference room, heads down but determined. Observers whisper that President Matsumoto Shigeo of the Japanese Hunters Association is being pushed to his limit after Goto's death. Some commentators mutter that it is almost satisfying to see the association struggle. After all, they once held a near monopoly on S-rank talent. The talk turns to whether the Draw Sword Guild will lose its top position in Japan. Sugimoto overhears the barbed comments, stops, and fixes the men with a cold glare. They fall silent and back away. Outside the conference, Minoru tells Sugimoto that those critics weren't so bold before Goto's loss, and Kane adds a rumor. The Black Tiger Guild and Snowcloud Guild might merge, bringing their combined S-rank count up to 4, the same number the Draw Sword Guild still has. Sugimoto waves the concern off. He argues that simply counting S-ranks doesn't tell the whole story. Those other guilds lack the depth and real strength necessary to stand up to a true S-rank crisis. The scene cuts to a government meeting room where tempers flare. An angry official demands to know why the Hunters Association hasn't mounted a response to the S-rank gate in central Tokyo and warns of the catastrophic consequences of a dungeon break. Chairman Matsumoto Shigeo answers soberly. The remaining S-rank hunters in Japan are not capable of clearing an S-rank gate without support from national-level hunters. Another official points out the obvious and painful lesson from the Jeju raid. Attempting an S-rank clear without national support can end in disaster. Japan already lost its best men, including one who was rumored to be nearing national level. Someone suggests contacting Thomas Andre, the American national-level hunter, but the room quickly realizes Japan lacks the funding to hire such mercenaries. Every nation is now scrambling. With gates popping up worldwide, mercenary national-level hunters are in demand and expensive. The discussion grows tenser as options dwindle and diplomatic channels strain. Japan has few external recourses left. At that moment, Sugimoto speaks up with a different solution. He mentions a specialist known as the barrier expert, Yuri Orlof, someone who might be willing to help, but only for the right price. The scene opens with Sung Jin Wu sitting alone in his car, reflecting on his progress. He notes that he's reached level 101. At level 100, he received the key to the Cartenon Temple, and at 101, all his job-specific skills leveled up. He can't help but wonder what level 102 will bring as he steps out of the car. In the parking lot, he spots Hae-in. She freezes when she sees him and immediately turns to walk away. In a blink, Jin Wu is beside her. He questions, silently and with a half-tease, why she ran. If she planned to flee, why come to his office at all? Flustered, Hae-in stammers and points toward a parked car, explaining it's still there. Last time she couldn't take it because they used Shadow Exchange to teleport to the gym. Cha asks whether Jin Wu has time to talk. He invites her to continue somewhere private. Inside his office, Cha glances around at the emptiness. Jin Wu explains that Vice Guildmaster Yu Jin-ho stayed behind at the dungeon site, which leaves the two of them alone, a fact that makes Cha flush with embarrassment. Cha avoids confessing her feelings. Instead, she relays a message from Min Byung-yu. She had seen a vision while unconscious on Jeju Island. Drifting in darkness, a hand reached down and pulled her up. In that vision, Min Byung-yu warned that his power was overwhelming and terrifying. Something Jin Wu needed to understand. He had attempted to mention Jin Wu's true army before vanishing, but the message ended there. Later, Jin Wu sits in a dungeon room, turning Cha's message over in his head. He tells himself that tracking the origin of his summons is a priority. Answers matter more than rank gains. Beside him, Yu Jin-ho asks a practical question. If Jin Wu's summons can move on their own, why do the team members need to accompany them? Why not let the shadows handle raids while the hunters relax? Jin Wu answers plainly. He can't always trust the summons to behave without oversight. They're powerful, but unpredictable when left unchecked. The conversation shifts to family. Jin-ho asks about Jin Wu's sister. Jin Wu reports that Sung Jin-ah is recovering after the school incident. Doctors recommended rest, so he's posted his most trusted shadows to guard her. Wanting to check on her personally, Jin Wu uses shadow vision to look through the eyes of one of his summons. He links into Baru's perspective and sees the Ant King's shadow lounging on the couch, watching TV while Jinna sleeps. Jin Wu sighs at the casual sight and can't help a bemused thought about what kind of show a summoned Ant King might enjoy. He decides to check on other shadows as well. Through his skill, he watches his mother buying groceries, then catches Baek Yun-ho and Choi Jong-in bickering as usual. Mundane, human moments that put him at ease. Curious, he flicks to one more target and, to his horror, accidentally watches Hae-in in the shower. Startled, Jin Wu immediately severs the connection. Embarrassed, he settles back into silence. Jin Wu blushes and resolves to apologize to Cha. Maybe even buy her lunch sometime to make amends. The mood shifts when Yu Jin-ho reports new intelligence. An S-rank gate has opened in Shinjuku, Tokyo, and a dungeon break is likely in less than 3 days. Japan is urgently summoning hunters. Jin-ho asks whether the Japanese officials contacted Sung Jin-woo. Jinwoo confirms they did, but he says something else is occupying his mind right now. The mystery Min Byung-yu hinted at. As they speak, the dungeon trembles. The ground rumbles beneath them. The two prepare to move out. The scene moves to Tokyo, where Russian national-level hunter Yuri Orlof introduces himself to Sugimoto, a Japanese official, and presents himself as the world's premier support-type hunter. Orlof mocks the Draw Sword Guild's evacuation choice and scoffs at Japan's manpower shortfall. He says he read their report and agrees that evacuating civilians was wise, but ridicules the idea that Japan could spare only 6 S-rank hunters for the Shinjuku operation. Sugimoto explains the reason. Multiple A-rank gates have opened across Japan, forcing each guild to leave at least 1 S-rank behind to defend its territory. Even Sugimoto's own guild is leaving an S-rank at home, while 3 others deploy to Shinjuku. Orlof sneers that the arrangement is pathetic and questions how the country can realistically protect itself under those conditions. He then offers blunt terms. He will hold the Shinjuku gate for them, for a price. He names a staggering fee, framed as roughly $3.6 billion per year, about $10 million per day. Sugimoto and the assembled officials react in shock at the demand. Orlof downplays it by comparison, claiming that, relative to Thomas Andre's rumored price, His rate is a bargain. Nearby hunters bristle at his tone. Minoru whispers to Kanzaki and asks what the Russian is saying. Kanzaki, who understands some Russian, reports that Orlof's words are hostile even if the precise phrasing is unclear. Pushing the provocation further, Orlov challenges them. Are you trying to save your country or trying to save money? His insults draw Minoru forward, furious at the implication. Without flair, Orlov activates his power. A shimmering barrier snaps into place and traps everyone in the room. Movement becomes impossible inside the field. Calm and unhurried, Orlov points out that nobody will be able to take a single step without his permission, not even S-rank hunters, and the gathered men struggle fruitlessly against the containment. With a smug calculation, Orlov offers terms to Sugimoto. He will hold the Shinjuku Gate and release their S-rank hunters, effectively granting them safe passage, but only if Japan accepts his price. Cornered and with no better option on the table, confirms Orlov abilities. Sugimoto reluctantly agrees and prepares to place the call. Meanwhile, in Korea, Jinwoo prepares himself for the double dungeon. Before he departs, his mother, still recovering, asks softly if there's anything she should be worried about. Jinwoo gently reassures her, telling her not to worry and that he just has something important to take care of. The timer on his temple key finally runs out, revealing the gate's location. Shockingly, it's at his sister Gina's school. Without hesitation, Jinwoo rushes to the site. Outside the gate, Hunter Association agents stand guard. When Jinwoo approaches, he calmly asks how long the gate has been there. They explain it has lingered for 3 days, registered only as a C-rank gate. A Hunter assault squad had already entered about 2 hours earlier. Hearing this, Jinwoo warns them with urgency. The squad must be called back immediately. Remaining inside would mean certain death. Without waiting for further debate, he strides directly into the gate, declaring that he will bring the squad back himself. Inside, the assault squad has already reached the doors of the boss room. Despite their efforts, including magic, the massive stone doors remain sealed shut. As they argue about their next move, a voice echoes behind them, warning them that it's a trap. Startled, the squad turns to see Jinwoo standing calmly in the shadows. Suspicious, they demand to know who he is and why he's here. Jinwoo answers that he is a survivor of a double dungeon. At first, they doubt him until one of them suddenly recognizes him, the new S-rank hunter of Korea. Realizing his words might hold weight, Jinwoo explains that this dungeon is far too dangerous and urges them all to leave. He steps forward, examining the sealed stone doors, when the system's familiar text appears before him. The gate to the Carton Temple is locked. Please insert the key. Pulling out the temple key, Jinwoo notices how different this feels compared to his first time here. As he unlocks the doors, the other hunters watch in shock. None of their attempts had worked, yet Jinwoo effortlessly opens the way. One of the squad members protests, reminding him that this dungeon had been purchased by the Dragon Guild. It was technically their property. They refuse to simply let him take command. Jinwoo doesn't argue. Instead, he gives them the choice. If they truly wish to enter, they may. One reckless hunter takes the challenge and steps through the open doorway. Instantly, the system responds. Unauthorized entry detected. A stone statue awakens and swings its massive sword down at the intruder. Jinwoo reacts in an instant, pulling the hunter out of harm's way before the strike lands. The hunter collapses in shock, realizing how close he came to death. Jinwoo's voice cuts firmly through the silence. Every monster in this place is like that. Are they still willing to risk it? The squad falls silent. Jinwoo orders them instead to contact the Hunter Association and report that a double dungeon has appeared. Without waiting for their response, he walks into the boss chamber alone. The heavy doors slam shut behind him, sealing him inside. As he steps forward, the chamber slowly illuminates. Dozens of massive stone statues stand frozen, their shadows stretching across the walls. Among them, a winged statue cradles a stone slab filled with inscriptions. At the very center, an imposing figure sits motionless upon a throne, its presence suffocating. Jinwoo studies the room, speaking softly to himself. This was where everything began, the place where his journey as a player started. Yet now it feels different. He can sense it deep in his bones. As his eyes scanned the towering statues, he recognized they were neither alive nor monsters, just lifeless puppets, controlled by something unseen. Sensing a single source of magic in the chamber, he walked toward it and demanded an answer. Silence followed until at last the winged statue moved and declared that he had finally arrived. Meanwhile, in Japan, a plane touches down at Tokyo International Airport. From it steps Yuri Orlof, Russia's top-ranked barrier-type hunter. Almost instantly, the press swarms him with cameras and questions. The reporters demand to know how he intends to block off the massive gate threatening the city. Calmly, Orlof explains his method. He will draw a vast magic circle encircling the gate, then pour his own mana into it, forming a barrier strong enough to prevent anything inside from escaping. When pressed further, the reporters ask if he can truly seal an S-rank gate on his own. Orlof admits he cannot maintain such a barrier with only his strength. However, the circle he constructs does not rely solely on him. If a large supply of mana crystals is placed throughout Tokyo, the circle will absorb their energy. Over time, it will continue to gather power until the barrier transforms into an impenetrable wall. Confident before the flashing cameras, Orlof addresses the public directly. He declares that he is the one who will save their lives and insists they remember who stood between them and disaster. Back in Korea, Chairman Go Gun-hee watches the televised interview. He quietly reflects that while Orlof may or may not succeed in sealing an S-rank gate, the outcome of failure is already certain. Tokyo would be destroyed. Turning away from the screen, he asks his right-hand man, Woo Jin-chul, what Hunter Sung Jinwoo has been doing recently. Wu reports that Jinwoo has been actively clearing gates around Seoul. He adds that Jinwoo's Ajin Guild has filed requests to take over every portal marked on a particular list. The issue, however, is that those gates lie within districts normally managed by the White Tiger Guild, the Hunters Guild, and the Fiend Guild, a decision that may spark conflict. After some thought, Chairman Go Gun-hee approves the request regardless, deciding to support Jinwoo's moves despite the political risks. As Woo Jin-chul prepares to leave, his phone rings. He steps aside to take the call. On the line, a field officer reports the sudden appearance of another gate. At first, it seems routine, but the location stands out. It has opened at the very same school recently attacked by orcs. Investigators confirm the worst. It is not just any portal, but a double dungeon. Back inside the double dungeon, Sung Jinwoo stood before the winged statue that had come alive. The creature shattered a stone slab and acknowledged his arrival, claiming that he had finally reached this stage. Jinwoo questioned whether the being itself was responsible for summoning him here, and whether destroying the slab was allowed. The entity confirmed it, but dismissed his question of identity. Instead, it told Jinwoo he was asking the wrong thing. Rather than wondering who the statue was, he should first uncover the truth about himself. Declaring that the final trial was about to begin, the being promised to reveal everything only if Jinwoo could endure until the end. At that moment, the stone statues surrounding the chamber began to move, slowly advancing. Jinwoo prepared to summon his shadow army, but the entity snapped its fingers. The summons were suppressed. This was to be a personal test. Only Jinwoo would be measured here. His servants were irrelevant. System restrictions followed instantly. Potions and shop items were locked. Recovery from quest rewards or level-up bonuses was denied. An escape from the chamber was no longer possible until the test ended. Jinwoo realized every advantage he had relied on had been stripped away. Yet his inventory remained untouched. He clenched his fists, deciding he would fight using only his strength. The first stone soldier swung its massive sword at him. Jinwoo caught the blade in midair, snapped it clean in two, and hurled one half into the statue's face. As the shard embedded itself, Jinwoo rushed forward, driving the fragment deeper with a crushing kick. The other statues charged, but Jinwoo's movements blurred. He slipped past their strikes, leaped high, and plunged his dagger through one's head. From the corner, another statue loosed an arrow. Jinwoo reacted instantly, slicing the projectile midair and kicking a shard back into the archer's face, shattering it. One by one, the guardians fell to his relentless assault. As he fought, Jinwoo realized something. Once, these statues had seemed impossibly fast, like they were teleporting. But now, with his sharpened eyes and honed reflexes, he could track each of their movements. They were powerful, but no longer untouchable. Above, the winged figure hovered silently, observing every clash. It admitted, at least to itself, that Jinwoo's progress was remarkable. Such strength born within the limits of a human body. But the trial was far from over. The creature raised its hand, and the temple floor shook violently. From the shadows of the chamber, an enormous stone colossus emerged, dwarfing the others by several times. Its heavy steps made the ground tremble, its presence overwhelming even compared to the guardians Jinwoo had just dismantled. As the giant advanced, the entity watched with a faint smirk, eager to see how far Sung Jinwoo had truly come. The scene shifts to the chairman's office, where Go Gun-hee is holding a private meeting. An official places a set of documents before him, explaining that the contract clearly states Japan will hand over all rights to the essence stones found on Jeju Island. Sitting across from him, Matsumoto Shigeo, the chairman of the Japanese Hunters Association, calmly explains the reasoning behind this unusual proposal. Their objective is to hire the Korean hunter, Sung Jin-woo. Chairman Go responds carefully, reminding Matsumoto that Jinwoo is not formally affiliated with the Korean Hunters Association. Matsumoto acknowledges this fact, clarifying that what they seek is not ownership or control over Jinwoo, but simply the Korean Association's assistance in arranging a meeting. They had been unable to reach him directly, and this offer was their last resort. Hearing this, Go Gun-hee reflects inwardly. He cannot believe that Japan is willing to sacrifice such a vast fortune simply for a chance to speak with Jinwoo. He suspects that their desperation comes from their inability to deal with the looming threat of the massive S-rank gate in Tokyo, especially after the death of their strongest hunter, Goto Ruji. After a pause, Chairman Go places the documents back on the table. He then requests to continue the discussion without interpreters present. Speaking in fluent Japanese, he shocks Matsumoto, who stares at him in disbelief. When asked how he knows the language, Go calmly explains that his father had once run a small business in Japan when he was younger. Once the interpreters leave the room, the atmosphere changes. Chairman Go addresses Matsumoto directly, warning him that if this is yet another one of his deceptive schemes, he would do well to end it immediately. Matsumoto looks startled and asks what he means. But Go Gun-hee presses further, revealing that he already knows the Blade Guild has severed ties with Matsumoto. Startled, Matsumoto rises to his feet, demanding to know how the Korean chairman came by this information. Go explains that it was obvious. He had observed how the Blade Guild rejected financial support from the Japanese Hunters Association, choosing instead to rely solely on government subsidies. Once the Blade Guild had been the backbone of the association under the leadership of Goto Ryuji. But with Goto's death, the balance of power in Japan had crumbled, leaving the association weakened and struggling to maintain control. He warns Matsumoto that if the gate in Tokyo is not sealed properly, the entire burden of failure will fall upon him. At that moment, Go Gun-hee produces a recording device. He explains that it once belonged to Goto's team. He accuses Matsumoto of harboring malicious intentions, declaring that all the tragedies unfolding in Japan, the death of Goto, the collapse of the Blade Guild, the infighting between guilds, and the countless lives lost, are the direct result of Matsumoto's actions. When Matsumoto nervously asks about the device, Chairman Go reveals that it is directly connected to Matsumoto's personal receiver. Without hesitation, he clenches his fist, shattering the device with such overwhelming strength that the table beneath it cracks apart. Go Gun-hee then speaks with unwavering resolve. He states that he is not so heartless as to allow an entire nation, and by extension the whole of Asia, to fall into ruin because of the selfish scheming of a single man. He ends the meeting by saying that, in the end, Matsumoto will have no choice but to be grateful to hunter Sung Jin-woo for this one. Meanwhile, back inside the double dungeon, Sung Jin-woo continued his desperate battle against the endless wave of stone creatures. He cut down many of them, yet no matter how many fell, more kept advancing. His attention shifted toward the colossal statue at the back of the chamber, its glowing eyes locked on him. The giant began preparing an attack. Realizing that he couldn't dodge in time, Jinwoo quickly used Commander's Touch, lifting several of the smaller statues and forming a makeshift shield. But the massive beam tore through them with ease, disintegrating the summoned soldiers and shattering the barrier. Jin Wu barely escaped with his life, thinking to himself that a direct hit would kill him instantly, even with his current strength. Knowing that the smaller enemies would keep coming unless he dealt with their source, Jinwoo decided to target the larger statue first. The giant lifted its foot and brought it down with devastating force. Jinwoo dashed forward at the last second, avoiding the stomp that left a deep crater in the ground. The statue smirked as if it believed it had crushed him, but Jinwoo reappeared, rushing toward it once more. The statue prepared another deadly attack, but Jinwoo activated Monarch's domain, enhancing his speed, and moved behind the massive figure. Using Ruler's authority, he realized the gravitational force he now commanded was stronger than ever. Even with just a small amount of mana, he was able to affect such a massive target. Seizing the opening, he unleashed mutilation, slashing the statue's face with his Demon King's daggers. To his shock, the blades barely scratched its surface. Frustrated but determined, Jin Wu switched tactics. Using brute strength, he targeted a small crevice in the statue's head, grabbed hold, and unleashed a devastating strike. For the first time, the massive creature reacted with panic. From above, the winged entity observed with surprise. The being remarked that Jin Wu had chosen a brutal approach against its carefully crafted creation. But Jin Wu did not stop. He relentlessly hammered his fists into the giant stone creature, pouring every ounce of his strength into a final blow. He declared that he would show what it truly meant to stand at level 103. With a thunderous strike, the massive statue toppled, crashing violently into the ground. Not wasting a moment, Jinwoo leapt down into the horde of smaller stone monsters. They surged toward him, but he spread his hand and used Dominator's touch, slamming them all into the ground at once. The chamber fell silent as the last of the creatures were wiped out effortlessly. With the battlefield cleared, Jinwoo turned his gaze toward the winged entity still hovering above. The being applauded, clearly impressed by the display of strength. Jinwoo, however, remembered the promise, that his questions would finally be answered. But instead of keeping its word, the creature declared that the test was not yet over. It reminded him that it still remained alive. At that moment, a system notification appeared before Jinwoo. An urgent quest had been issued. Defeat the enemy within the allotted time. 10 minutes remain. Failure will result in immediate death by cardiac arrest. The winged entity then revealed itself as the true challenge, stating that it was the final test. Jinwoo demanded to know who or what this being really was. With a smirk, the creature finally gave its answer. It was the architect of the system, the one who had overseen every step of his growth. It then asked if Jinwoo was satisfied with that explanation. Outside the dungeon, Association Director Woo Jin-chul arrived with 7 elite hunters from the Korean Hunters Association. As they neared the gate, a suffocating wave of mana poured out, chilling everyone to the bone. He asked the others if they could feel it too. The sensation was unlike anything they had experienced before. He quickly checked which guilds were on standby and learned that the Hunter Guild was prepared to raid. Both Cha Hae-in and Choi Jong-in, 2 of Korea's strongest S-rank hunters, had already agreed to participate. Realizing how dire the situation could become, Woo Jin-chul immediately ordered them to join the raid. Inside the dungeon, Sung Jin-woo braced himself for his true showdown with the architect. The winged being transformed its wings into muscular arms and charged forward at incredible speed, slamming a devastating punch into Jinwoo and sending him crashing into the wall. Without pause, the architect pressed the assault. Jinwoo barely dodged and tried to create distance, but the attacks came relentlessly. A barrage of punches rained down on him. He blocked each blow, refusing to fall. The architect admitted that Jinwoo's defense was impressive, claiming he was exceeding expectations. Then, with a heavy strike to Jinwoo's face, the being thought the fight was finished, only to be stunned when Jinwoo retaliated. The hunter surged forward and delivered a brutal punch that knocked the architect back several feet. A grin spread across the architect's face. For the first time, it admitted it was enjoying a battle against a human opponent. Jinwoo quickly analyzed the situation. The being had invited him here the moment he surpassed level 100, expecting him to be powerless before it. But Jinwoo refused to accept defeat. He demanded answers: why the system was created, why he had been chosen as its player, and what fate awaited this world. The architect lunged again, mocking the idea that Jin Wu thought killing him would reveal those answers. Knowing close combat was dangerous, Jinwoo attempted to fight at range with ruler's authority, hurling objects from a distance. But the architect unleashed a massive explosion, nullifying the attack. Jinwoo realized with frustration that the being could use the same abilities he had. Range combat was useless. The architect then declared that the truth had already been decided long ago, since the moment the system had been designed. It summoned every weapon in the chamber, demanding to know how such a system was even possible. Jin Wu asked how a mere architect could give him so much power. Calmly, the creature explained that it had not chosen him at all. In fact, it had been against his selection. Its role was only to design and moderate the player selection system. With just 6 minutes left on the quest timer, Jin Wu had no choice but to face the architect head-on. The wing being ascended, declaring it would now fight with its full power. Its attacks came like a storm, yet Jin Wu moved with supernatural precision, vanishing and reappearing with each dodge. He noticed something strange. His senses were sharpening, his body growing faster. He could read every movement of his opponent. Seizing an opening, Jin Wu landed a clean strike to the architect's face, stunning the being. The architect was bewildered. Even at full force, Jin Wu was keeping up, and even surpassing him. With a swift slash, Jin Wu severed one of the being's arms. The architect looked down at the wound in disbelief. It realized that, even though this body was only a construct, Jin Wu's attacks still caused pain. Observing him more closely, the architect finally understood why he had been chosen. Buried deep inside the hunter was something more. Something beyond human. In rage, the architect roared, refusing to accept it. With fury, it resurrected every fallen stone soldier in the chamber. The countdown ticked down to 3 minutes. Jin Wu rushed headfirst into battle once again. With ruler's authority, he swept through the revived enemies. A massive statue swung at him, but he dodged effortlessly and closed the gap toward the architect, striking with overwhelming speed and severing another arm. The architect countered with a crushing blow, sending Jin Wu crashing back into the wall. As he rose, Jin Wu saw a familiar face, the colossal stone soldier who had nearly ended his life during his first visit to this dungeon. Fueled by rage, he smashed his elbow into its skull, shattering it in two. Turning back with 2 minutes left, Jin Wu gathered all his strength for one final attack. He unleashed everything in a single, devastating strike. The entire chamber erupted in a massive explosion. When the dust cleared, Jin Wu stood victorious. The architect had fallen. With its final breath, the being whispered that the answers Jin Wu sought lay within himself. A notification appeared before his eyes. The data stored within his memory would be retrieved. The architect told him that the choice was his to make. After a moment of hesitation, Jin Wu accepted. Suddenly, light engulfed him, and his spirit was transported to another realm. Below him stretched a sight both terrifying and awe-inspiring, an endless army of monsters. The sight left Jin Wu frozen. Every creature in that army was gazing upward, and when Jin Wu followed their gaze, he saw it. A massive gate hanging in the sky, set against a purple backdrop. From ice elves and high orcs, to goblins, giants, and countless other monsters, the army stretched endlessly across the battlefield. Jin Wu realized that if such an army ever crossed into Earth, humanity would be utterly destroyed. Then the sky split open. Soldiers clad in radiant armor, with wings like angels, descended from above. These were the Silver Soldiers, the army of heaven. An epic battle erupted between the Silver Soldiers and the endless horde of monsters. The ground shook with each clash. Weapons shattered, armor crumbled, and screams of agony filled the air. At first, the Silver Soldiers held the upper hand, overwhelming the monsters with divine strength. But then the tide shifted. One by one, the Silver Soldiers froze in their advance as a new presence entered the battlefield. Jin Wu felt it immediately, the overwhelming aura of a monarch. A shadowy figure stepped forward and raised its hand. Instantly, the fallen monsters began to rise again. Using shadow extraction, the being resurrected the dead into its own army. Jin Wu's eyes widened in shock. This was the Shadow Monarch. An immortal army was born from death itself. The slain monsters returned with blackened blood, their bodies reforged in shadow. Jin Wu trembled as he realized the truth. The monarch's ability to summon was beyond comprehension, an endless tide of shadow soldiers, each more fearsome than the last. The silver soldiers, once so dominant, began to falter. The battlefield descended into chaos as shadow and silver clashed violently. The ground split and the skies thundered with the weight of their war. The Silver Army should have claimed victory, yet with the arrival of a single being, everything changed. Wherever the Shadow Monarch walked, destruction followed. Using a power Jin Wu instantly recognized as Dominion's authority, the monarch tore through the silver soldiers. Every fallen shadow rose again, endlessly overwhelming the divine army. The battlefield belonged to him. Victory seemed inevitable for the Shadow Monarch and his army, until they appeared. Meanwhile, the scene shifts back to the depths of the double dungeon. Wu Jinchul, Hae-in, Choi Jong-in, and several other hunters arrive at the chamber. The moment they step inside, they sense the enormous pressure of mana radiating through the air. Hae-in turns toward Wu Jinchul, questioning whether he is certain that Jinwoo is inside. Something about this energy feels wrong. This mana is powerful, but it doesn't belong to Jinwoo. If not his, then whose could it be? As the hunters advance deeper into the chamber, they are struck with shock. Before them lie shattered remains of massive stone statues and broken fragments of stone soldiers scattered across the floor. Wu Jinchul mutters to himself, realizing that the rumors were true. The legendary statues and sculptures really had existed. Before the group can gather their thoughts, a cold voice echoes throughout the chamber. It remarks that humans were never invited here, calling their presence an unexpected intrusion. Startled, the hunters hesitate, some wondering if they had only imagined a monster speaking, but the truth becomes clear as the figure behind the voice reveals itself. The architect steps forward, its voice filled with disdain as it commands the hunters to be silent. It accuses them of disturbing the king's slumber. Confusion spreads among the hunters as they question among themselves who this king could possibly be. In the corner of the chamber, their eyes fall on Sung Jinwoo. He stands silently, unmoving, as though lost in another world entirely. Suddenly, the architect makes its move. With terrifying speed, it dashes past several hunters, and in an instant, some are cut down. The architect declares that strong humans like these would make perfect offerings for the king. Meanwhile, Jinwoo's consciousness drifts elsewhere. Within his vision, countless portals begin to open one after another, filling the void with ominous energy. From within those rifts, endless armies emerge, marching forward with terrifying might. Jinwoo recognizes them instantly. They are the armies of the monarchs. Among them is Quresha, the plague monarch, Baran, the demon king, and Rakan, the beast monarch. Others also appear, powerful monarchs from distant clans such as Yogman and Legia. Among the advancing forces, a colossal wolf steps forth, radiating savage killing intent. Its very presence confirms that the beast monarch has arrived. The vast armies grind to a halt, assembling in formation before the Shadow Monarch. The air grows tense, heavy with anticipation. Both sides know what comes next. The stage is set, and the final battle is about to begin. The scene shifts back to the hunters inside the double dungeon, where they struggle to defend themselves against the architect and its stone soldiers. Choi Jong-in takes command of the situation. He instructs the hunters to use every skill they have and to move the wounded toward the back. The architect watches with disdain. It declares that by the time its puppets fall, anyone left alive will receive the great honor of witnessing the king's awakening, if any manage to survive. As one of the colossal statues charges forward, Choi Jong-in quickly orders everyone to take cover. The massive strike slams down, but Choi manages to dodge. He retaliates with a blazing fireball aimed directly at the statue's face. He urges the others to use this opening to destroy the remaining stone soldiers. Wu Jinchul steps up and throws a powerful punch at the colossal statue. To his shock, the blow has no effect at all. Choi attacks again with another fireball, but even his magic fails to leave so much as a scratch. Panic spreads among the guild members as they realize none of their attacks are working. With options running out, Choi Jong-in comes to a conclusion. The only hope is to wake Sung Jinwoo, who appears trapped as if under hypnosis. He hurls a fireball toward Jinwoo, believing it to be the only way to break him free. But before the attack can land, the architect intercepts it and launches itself at Choi, furious that anyone would dare disturb the king's slumber. Choi freezes in shock, convinced this is the end for him. But before the architect can strike, Wu Jinshul and several other hunters intercept its assault, barely saving him. Meanwhile, Sung Jinwoo remains lost within his vision. He finds himself witnessing a colossal battle between the Shadow Army and countless demon clans. He observes how the shadows, even after being cut down, rise again endlessly. He thinks to himself that if those had been his soldiers, he would have already run out of mana. But the Shadow Monarch's power is different. It seems like a bottomless well of energy. Jinwoo begins to wonder if the Shadow Monarch had not been aligned with the monsters after all, or if there was some deeper internal conflict between them. The battle rages until finally, silence falls across the battlefield. Corpses of both demons and shadows litter the ground. From amidst the carnage, the Shadow Monarch approaches the defeated leader of the demon clans. His voice is filled with fury as he demands to know why they betrayed him when they had the chance to end the war that day. The demon only responds with defiance, mocking that it is unfortunate he failed to eliminate the monarch. The monarch, in rage, demands an answer once more. But the creature snarls back in the demonic tongue. In his fury, the Shadow Monarch grabs the demon by the mouth and crushes its skull with his bare hand. Yet even that brutal strike is not enough to kill it. The monarch stares deeply into its eyes, puzzled, as though he recognizes them from somewhere before. He tears away the demon's helmet and at last realizes the truth. It is Baran, the demon king. Shocked, the monarch wonders why Baran was here among the clans. But then his attention falls to his own body. He looks down at his hands in confusion, and the truth becomes clear. The one fighting the demon clans and the silver soldiers had been Sung Jinwoo himself all along. Jinwoo reels at the revelation, stunned that he had not realized it sooner. Then in his chest he feels it, a heartbeat, but not just one. He discovers he has two hearts, one normal, human heart, and another dark and black. Before he can process what this means, silver soldiers begin to descend from the skies above. A cold notification echoes in his mind. Playback of retrieved data has ended. Back inside the double dungeon, the architect turns his attention to Hae-in. He calls her interesting and challenges her to push beyond his designs. Cha launches forward with her sword dance, but the architect blocks the strike with ease. He counters immediately, his blow slashing across her shoulder. A sharp cry escapes her lips as pain overwhelms her. The architect explains coldly that the dungeon system anticipates every possible outcome. He reveals that their weapons, no matter how strong, are useless against his statues. Suddenly, Choi Jong-in intervenes, landing a surprise strike on the architect. His attack buys Cha the chance to dash toward Jinwoo. But before she can reach him, she glances back, and her heart sinks. The architect has already appeared behind her, his hand stretching forward to grab her. Cha narrowly dodges, barely escaping his grasp. The architect notices something strange, a faint shadow lingering on her shoulder. With curiosity, he questions what her relationship is with Sung Jinwoo. Cha replies firmly that she is his friend and that she came here to save him. The architect smiles ominously and declares that he will give her a chance. He states that, on this very day, one of the greatest monarchs in the world will rise. She may bear witness to it, but the rest of the humans will die. Before the architect can act further, another voice cuts through the chamber. A furious strike follows. Jinwoo appears and smashes his fist across the architect's face, shattering its jaw. The creature crashes to the floor as Jinwoo steps forward, demanding to know what had been done to his body. The hunters exhale in relief. Sung Jinwoo has awakened. Without hesitation, Jinwoo pins the architect down and crushes its head under his foot. The architect screams in protest, insisting that Jinwoo is not the king. It cries out in disbelief that he can control himself even while bearing the black heart. From this, Jinwoo realizes the truth. The overwhelming power coursing through him is coming directly from the black heart. A system notification appears. His mana has increased by 100,000. Jinwoo studies the architect's reaction. This development was never intended. The black heart was not supposed to strengthen him. Even the retrieved data he had absorbed had not revealed the full truth. He questions the architect, demanding to know why he had opposed choosing him as a player. What was the purpose of selecting someone? What did the system truly intend to achieve? The architect, desperate, cries out that Jinwoo has doomed them all. By claiming the Shadow Monarch's power, he has drawn the gaze of the other monarchs. They will not remain silent. Jinwoo unsheathes his daggers, pressing for an answer. At the same time, panic spreads among the hunters. Around them, the once motionless statues begin to stir, coming to life once again. The architect warns that if Jinwoo kills him, there will be no one left to stop the dolls. Jinwoo responds coolly. If the architect dies, he will simply deal with the statues himself. The architect insists that if he perishes, the entire system will collapse. Jinwoo smirks, remarking that there was always a chance he could return to being nothing more than an E-rank hunter. He reasons that even if the system's creator disappears, it does not mean the system itself will vanish. The architect desperately tries to access the system, but notifications flash repeatedly before him. Access denied. Stunned, he turns back toward Jinwoo, who declares that he will not only destroy the system, he will swallow it whole. The architect rejects this as impossible, insisting that it must be a system error. Overcome with rage, he lunges forward, but Jinwoo moves faster. With a swift motion of his daggers, he slices the architect into pieces. As the fragments of its body collapse to the ground, the architect utters one last prophecy. It warns that, when the pillars of fire that hold the heavens are raised, an inevitable death will approach your way. Jinwoo, with a steely glint in his eyes and a cold smirk, simply responded, "As you please." Meanwhile, outside the dungeon, members of the association stood anxiously, waiting for the hunters to return. It had already been over an hour since the Hunter Guild entered, and the unease grew heavier with every passing minute. Whispers spread among them as they wondered what could possibly be happening inside a C-rank gate that required this much time. At last, movement appeared at the entrance. The hunters of the guild began to emerge one by one, but the sight that greeted the association members left them frozen in shock. The so-called elites of the Hunter Guild were in a dreadful state, battered, broken, and some never to rise again. Confusion and disbelief filled the air. The question that no one could answer lingered silently among them. What had actually happened inside a C-rank dungeon that could leave S-rank hunters in such a condition? Hunter Wu Jin-cheo quickly stepped forward, his expression grim. He turned toward the Bravery Guild members who were present and requested their assistance in moving the bodies of the fallen. Still stunned by the sight, the guild members could only nod in silence before rushing to help. Amidst the chaos, another figure emerged from the gate. Jin Wu walked out quietly, his thoughts heavy. The battle with the system's architect was over, but many questions still lingered in his mind. Even with the architect gone, the mysteries of the system had not yet been unraveled. Once everyone had exited, Wu Jin-cheo approached Jinwoo. His tone was heavy as he reported that nearly 20 of the nation's top elite hunters had lost their lives inside. If the incident had turned into a full-scale dungeon break, the devastation would have been beyond imagination. Unable to contain his curiosity, Wu asked Jinwoo how he had known about the presence of a double dungeon hidden within that particular gate. In response, Jinwoo explained that the dungeon had summoned him there. A message had appeared before him, instructing him to come. Wu asked if they could see this message for themselves, but Jinwoo shook his head. It had been something only he could perceive. The sincerity in his voice and his expression convinced Wu Jin-cheo that this was no joke. He knew Jin-woo was not a man who fabricated stories. At that moment, Hae-in rushed over. Her eyes scanned Jinwoo with concern as she asked how he was holding up. Jinwoo reassured her that he was fine, yet the words had barely left his lips before his body faltered. Suddenly, he collapsed to the ground. The scene erupted into panic as the association members and hunters around him rushed forward, calling out in alarm. The story shifts to Japan, where massive trucks loaded with mana crystals rumbled toward the site of an S-rank gate. The crystals had been gathered in staggering quantities, prepared for a dangerous ritual. Watching the delivery, Hunter Yuri Orlof observed with satisfaction. In his estimation, nearly 200,000 tons of mana crystals were being transported. more than enough to fuel the enormous magic circle he had designed. With a wave of his hand, he activated the formation, weaving a vast barrier around the gate. The structure began to draw in magic power on its own, stabilizing the area. But then Orlof's expression hardened. He sensed something. When one of the men near him asked if something was wrong, Orlof dismissed the concern, claiming the barrier was flawless. Yet he could still feel a presence nearby. Turning sharply, he called out, demanding that the unseen watcher reveal themselves. No response came. A soldier standing beside him wondered aloud what sort of person would be foolish enough to linger near a gate that could break at any moment. To this, Orlov quietly replied that he had never said it was a person. High above, on the rooftop of a nearby building, a figure stood in silence, watching. His name was Song Il-hwan. With narrowed eyes, he noted how events were progressing exactly as if they were part of a predetermined tragedy. Meanwhile, Japanese military forces began to surround the gate. Kana, one of the officials present, turned to Sugimoto with unease, asking why troops were being deployed when modern weapons were known to be useless against monsters. Sugimoto explained calmly that if Orlov's barrier failed, the soldiers would be used to stall for time until the first wave of hunters could arrive. Kana's face darkened as she realized the soldiers were nothing more than sacrificial pawns. Sugimoto, however, remained composed. He admitted that those in the association were no different, for in the end, they too stood on the front lines against calamities far greater than themselves. His gaze lingered on the gate as he muttered that humanity was about to witness just how powerless it truly was in the face of such disasters. Back at the gate, Yuri Orlov appeared confident. He believed that if things unfolded smoothly, he alone could handle the S-rank gate. He even entertained the thought of being remembered as the man who cleared an S-rank gate by himself. Yet he admitted begrudgingly, there was already someone far more fitting for such a title. With a grin, he uncorked a bottle, preparing to drink in celebration. A subordinate behind him warned that it might not be the best time. But Orlov only chuckled, declaring that he would soon put on the greatest show the man had ever seen. He downed the alcohol in one go, calming his nerves. He then turned and asked how many S-rank hunters were on standby for the operation. The answer came quickly, 15. His next question was why the United States had not sent reinforcements. The man reported grim news. An S-rank gate had appeared on the eastern coast of Maryland, while other gates had also emerged in England and India. As the two spoke, the situation worsened. The barrier trembled, and the massive gate before them began to crack, signaling the start of a break. At the same time, far away in Korea, Jin Wu slowly opened his eyes. He awoke in a hospital bed, disoriented, and sat upright. By his side sat Jin Ho, who had been faithfully waiting for him to wake. Jinwoo asked what had happened. At the sound of his voice, Jin Ho broke into tears, telling him that he had been unconscious for 3 long days. Without wasting a moment, Jinwoo's thoughts turned immediately to Japan. He asked about the situation at the S-rank gate. The scene shifts to the day of the dungeon break. From the massive gate, colossal figures began to emerge. Giants, monsters so powerful that under normal circumstances a single one of them would serve as the final boss of an A-rank dungeon. But here, there were many. Confident in his preparations, Hunter Yuri Orlov activated his barrier, drawing upon the massive supply of mana crystals. The giants crashed against the shimmering wall of magic, but the barrier held firm. Orlov grinned, convinced that creatures from mere A-rank gates stood no chance against his magic. But his confidence quickly turned to horror. From within the gate, a giant far larger than the others stepped forward, its weapon gleaming in the light. With a single swing, the monster cleaved through the supposedly unbreakable barrier as though it were nothing but glass. The story then returns to the present. Jin Ho sat beside Jin Woo's hospital bed, explaining the chain of disasters that had occurred while his Hyung had been unconscious. Elsewhere, Chairman Yu Myung-han stirred awake in his office after a long rest. He turned to his secretary and asked how long he had been asleep. The man replied that it had been 23 hours. They had been prepared to send him to the hospital if he remained unconscious beyond 24, just as he had ordered. The secretary then handed over a stack of documents. Within them was information on a patient who had been miraculously cured of eternal slumber. According to the report, that patient was none other than the mother of Hunter Jin Wu. Chairman Yu Myung-han's eyes narrowed as he considered the implications. He began to suspect that Jinwoo himself might hold the ability to cure the incurable. Before he could dwell on it further, his secretary announced that someone had arrived to meet with him. A woman entered the office, her eyes immediately focusing on his weakened condition. She asked how long he had been like this. Back in Japan, the devastation of the dungeon break unfolded. Yuri Orlof, the man who had boasted of holding the gate alone, was devoured whole by one of the towering giants. His barrier shattered, his body vanished without a trace. The Japanese military responded swiftly, unleashing every weapon at their disposal. But modern firepower was useless against the creatures of an S-rank gate. Bullets and shells bounced harmlessly off their enormous bodies. Realizing the scale of the disaster, Japan's Hunter Association chairman, Matsumoto Shigeo, gave a desperate order. He commanded the remaining S-rank hunters to intercept the giants and halt their advance. Without hesitation, every available S-rank charged toward the battlefield. They targeted the giants' eyes, hoping to blind them, but the monsters proved unnervingly fast. Despite their immense size, they moved with shocking agility, dodging attacks that should have struck true. Hunter Kanai Takeda, watching in disbelief, could hardly comprehend what she was seeing. She wondered how such massive creatures could possibly move with such speed. Meanwhile, back in Korea, Jinwoo sat in his room, watching footage of the battle in Japan. The images of the giants rampaging filled the screen. He reflected grimly that at this rate, just like during the Jeju Island raid, the entire Asian continent could soon be in danger. His thoughts turned to action. He began to consider leaving for Japan to personally deal with the dungeon break. But before he could make a decision, a familiar voice called out from behind him, urging him not to go. It was his younger sister, Sung Jin-ah. Startled, Jinwoo asked what she meant. She explained that she knew he was planning to leave. Jinwoo softened his voice and reassured her. He told her he wasn't going anywhere. Claiming he had been working too hard lately, he insisted that he only planned to rest for a while. He told her not to worry. Later that day, Jinwoo sat outside in a quiet park, lost in thought. He summoned Beru, the Ant King, and asked about the condition of his sister. Beru responded that there was nothing abnormal about her behavior, but Jinwoo wasn't convinced. He suspected she might be suffering from trauma. In the past, Jinna had never tried to stop him from entering a raid, except for his very first one, 4 years ago. The memory weighed heavily on him as he wondered what he should do. As he walked through the park, a sleek car stopped in front of him. Time fast-forwarded, and the scene shifted to an office within the Yujin Construction Guild. Inside, the CEO, Yu Myung-han, rose from his seat to greet Jinwoo. He introduced himself formally and gestured for him to sit. With deliberate care, Yu Myung-han placed a blank check on the desk between them. He explained that he was not arrogant enough to believe money could not buy anything, especially when dealing with an S-rank hunter. He asked Jinwoo to consider it a token of sincerity. Jinwoo studied the check silently. The gesture made him suspicious. Whatever he was about to hear would not be something as simple as a guild invitation. It was confidential. Finally, he spoke, asking what exactly Yu Myung-han wanted to buy from him. The CEO's expression hardened as he revealed the truth. He was suffering from the same illness that had once afflicted Jinwoo's mother, eternal slumber. Jinwoo asked whether Yu Jin-ho, his son, knew about this condition. Yu Myung-han shook his head. He explained that aside from his personal physician, only 3 people in the world were aware of his illness. He went on to explain that he had searched everywhere for a cure, but found nothing. In the end, his investigation led him to the only person who had ever recovered from eternal slumber, Jinwoo's mother. He did not believe it was a coincidence. With desperation in his voice, he asked Jinwoo to help him, vowing that he would never forget the kindness if his life was spared. As Jinwoo listened, his mind drifted back to his sister. He wondered if perhaps she too might one day need a potion. Not for a disease, but for the trauma she carried within her heart. The scene shifts to Japan. Reporters fly above the devastated city, documenting the aftermath of the massive dungeon break. From their helicopters, they capture the destruction below. One reporter wonders aloud what would happen if the giants decided to target them. Another reassures that they're safe, as long as they maintained their distance. Researchers had already confirmed this behavior. It was considered reliable. Giants wouldn't strike unless provoked. The cameras zoom in on the colossal leader among the monsters. Unlike the others, this massive giant stood directly in front of the gate, guarding it closely. Some speculated it was waiting for something, or perhaps someone. In the past 2 days, only 2 of the 30 giants had been defeated. At this pace, if the rampage continued, the entire world would soon be at risk. Back in Korea, inside the Ajin Guild office, Jin-ho sits in shock after hearing Sung Jinwoo's plan. Jinwoo intends to head to Japan. Jin-ho quickly protests. He reminds Jinwoo that this wasn't like Jeju Island. The monsters in Japan were far more dangerous, far larger than anything they had faced before. But Jinwoo responds calmly. If he succeeds in Japan, the name of the Ajin Guild would spread worldwide. Still, he notices that Jin-ho, who had always trusted him without hesitation, is worried this time. Eventually, Jin-ho agrees to let him go, but on one condition: they go together. He then points out something he'd been thinking about: the Red Gate, the Jeju Island raid, and the recent double dungeon. Every time something dangerous happened, Jin-ho had not been involved. He admits with some embarrassment that the only thing he could proudly claim was staying by Jinwoo's side. It's strange, Jin-ho reflects, but you're my only source of pride. Jinwoo can't help but smile. He jokes that such words don't sound like something a millionaire's son would say. Jin-ho replies firmly, if it's safe for Jinwoo, then it'll be safe for him too. At that, Jinwoo pretends to reconsider. Rising from his seat, he says casually that he was only joking. Why would he go to Japan right now? He tells Jin-ho to head home. But deep down, as he walks away, Jinwoo recalls the architect from the double dungeon, an enemy who might have been on his level. If beings like that exist, then there are still countless others stronger than him in this vast world. Later, Jinwoo arrives home and is warmly greeted by his mother. During dinner, he asks about Jinna. His mother explains that Jinna said she wasn't hungry. As he eats, Jinwoo's thoughts drift to Yu Myung-han, Jin-ho's father, the powerful head of the Yu family. The man had claimed to suffer from the incurable eternal slumber. Jinwoo doesn't truly know what kind of person he is, or whether his condition is genuine. The remaining holy water of life is limited. He has to be careful about how he uses it. After finishing his meal, Jinwoo tells his mother he'll be heading out again. He knows there are beings stronger than him out there, and if he wants to reach that level, he must continue to fight on the battlefield. Before leaving, he enters Jinna's room. Sitting beside her, he hesitates, wondering where to start. Finally, he confesses that he had almost died recently. He explains softly that he's always walking into danger, but this time was different. For a moment, he truly thought it was the end. Somehow, he made it back alive, and for that, he's grateful every time he comes home. He pats her head gently and promises her he will return safely this time as well. He thanks her for stopping him earlier when he tried to leave. With tears welling in her eyes, Jinna whispers that he would have left anyway. Jinwoo smiles faintly. Perhaps, but he reassures her once more. He will always come back. Time fast forwards to a press conference held by Chairman Go Gun-hee. Before the gathered media, he addresses the terrifying dungeon break in Japan. At the same time, Jinwoo has already made his decision. He will go there himself and deal with the S-rank gate. At the airport, as Jinwoo prepares to depart, he notices Yu Jin-ho among the crowd. Despite being told not to follow, Jin-ho had managed to come along anyway. Realizing he won't back down, Jinwoo sighs and reluctantly allows it. Together, the two prepare to board the plane bound for Japan. The story shifts to Japan once again. Chaos consumes the streets. The military desperately tries to evacuate civilians, shoving them onto trucks. A soldier shouts that there's only space for a few more people, 3 or 4 at most. The civilians hesitate, worrying about others left behind. The soldier urges them to stop wasting time. The giants are approaching, and if they stay, they'll all die. He tells them to find shelter quickly, but when he looks up, his eyes widen in terror. The giants have already found them. The soldiers unleash a hail of bullets, but their weapons are useless. One of the towering monsters stretches out its hand toward the survivors. Just as it's about to crush them, a massive trident pierces through its chest, sending the giant flying across several blocks before crashing lifeless into the rubble. The soldiers stare in disbelief. Who could have done this? Then they notice another monster-like figure. This one is protecting them. From the smoke, another figure steps forward, a lone man. He warns them to evacuate immediately. The area is no longer safe. That man is Jin Wu. At that moment, debris from a collapsing building begins falling toward the civilians. Jin Ho rushes forward, raising his massive shield just in time to protect them. He declares that he will stay behind and help the survivors escape. Hearing that, Jinwoo prepares to take out all the monsters in the area. Alongside Jima, he charges at the creatures. The giants are no match for Jima's strength, and it takes out multiple enemies with ease. Seeing this, Jinwoo then leaps forward himself. With a single strike of his dagger, he cleaves a giant cleanly in two. The story shifts across the ocean to the United States, inside the Scavenger Guild headquarters. Several hunters gather, gossiping about Jin Woo's bold actions in Japan. One hunter remarks that Lady Selner, the American Awakened Enhancer, had not boosted Jin Woo's power. Another scoffs, saying that even with a reawakening, every hunter has limits, and Jin Woo would eventually die if he kept throwing himself into such battles. Their idle chatter soon turns into a cruel game, as they begin betting on how long Jin Woo might last in the raid against the giants. But their laughter suddenly stops when a powerful voice interrupts from behind. It is none other than Thomas Andre, the guildmaster of the Scavenger Guild and one of the world's strongest hunters. Thomas declares that he would bet the entire guild headquarters itself that Jin Woo would survive. His words silence the room. Then with a cold glare, he warns the hunters to worry less about mocking others and more about themselves. A dungeon break in an American S-rank gate was only a day away, and he doubts many of them will even survive that battle. Looking out of the window with a grin, Thomas mutters that while Japan might have been entertaining, tomorrow's events in their own land would bring a different kind of spectacle. The scene then returns to Japan, where news outlets broadcast live footage of the battlefield. The chaos of the giant invasion fills every screen. Viewers watch as one of the monsters screams in agony, its flesh ripped apart as Ant King Baru's minions swarm and devour it alive. Elsewhere, a small girl runs through the ruins, desperately fleeing from a pursuing giant. Just as its massive hand is about to seize her, a figure clad in black armor appears like a shadow. It is Igris. With one swift strike, Igris slices off the monster's hand, saving the child. The giant bellows in pain, but before it can react, another shadow soldier charges forward. Iron slams into its skull with devastating force, crushing it into the earth. Standing triumphantly atop the corpse, Iron beats his chest proudly. Igris, watching his comrades' antics, lets out a subtle sigh, as if mildly exasperated by Iron's excitement. From a distance, Jin Wu observes his soldiers at work. Watching Iron, he notes to himself that the knight seems more spirited after his upgrade. Still, Jin Wu is relieved. His army is performing well. As he monitors the battlefield, a Japanese soldier cautiously approaches and expresses his gratitude. Not understanding the language, Jin Wu simply responds with a thumbs up, calling the man a brave soldier before signaling to Jin Ho. He orders Jin Ho to assist with the evacuation of survivors. With the civilians gone, Jin Wu turns his attention to the corpse of the fallen giant. Extending his hand, he channels shadow extraction, pulling its soul into his growing army of darkness. Meanwhile, at the Japanese Hunter Association headquarters, officials rush to inform Chairman Matsumoto Shigeo that their forces are gradually regaining control of the city thanks to Jin Wu. Hearing this, Matsumoto leans back in his chair, deep in thought. He reflects that perhaps Goto Ryuji, who once clashed with Jin Wu, had not been wrong after all. The memory of Jin Wu's piercing eyes at the airport resurfaces. Matsumoto had encountered countless hunters before, but Jin Wu's presence was on another level, untouchable, unmatched. He recalls their meeting upon Jin Wu's arrival in Japan. At that time, Matsumoto explained the dire situation. The giants were advancing toward Osaka, and he requested that Jin Wu defend the city. Matsumoto had believed that no matter how strong Jin Wu was, one man alone could not possibly defeat every giant in Japan. While Jin Wu held the line, Matsumoto had planned to negotiate for international reinforcements. But Jin Wu's reply had stunned him. Rather than agreeing to the defensive plan, Jinwoo boldly declared that he would hunt down every single giant by himself. The narration returns to the present, where Jinwoo stands before his new shadow soldiers. He considers giving them names, but instead decides to keep things simple by numbering them 1 through 5. Just as he finishes, Baru materializes before him, reporting that another enemy has been eliminated. Jin Wu calmly names this new soldier number 6. Turning back to Jin Ho, he tells his loyal companion to rest for now. Internally, Jin Wu reflects that while things have been progressing smoothly, this is only the beginning. Across Japan, his shadow army spreads like wildfire. The soldiers are unstoppable, tearing through giant after giant. Their regenerative ability allows them to rise again, even after being defeated, making them an immortal force of destruction. However, the aftermath of the S-rank dungeon break has created further problems. Smaller rifts have opened throughout the country, releasing hordes of lesser monsters. As a result, the Japanese Association struggles to balance simultaneous evacuation efforts and suppression operations, barely keeping the chaos under control. 7 days later, Sung Jin Woo and Yu Jin Ho were still scouring the ruined city, searching for any remaining survivors and exterminating the last remnants of the giants. Eventually, their search brought them to the massive leader of the giants, stationed directly before the S-rank gate. Taking in the devastation around them, Jin Ho sighed in dismay. To him, it felt as if everything had been completely ruined. Just then, a familiar voice called out. It was Hoshino Hankawa, the Japanese interpreter who had once traveled to Korea alongside Goto Ryuji. Jinwoo immediately asked her about the whereabouts of the other hunters. Hankawa explained that she was the only one left in Tokyo. The rest had either perished or scattered in the chaos. She added that the giants had spread across the country, but thanks to Jin Wu, the majority had already been annihilated. Now the few that remained were being hunted down by other awakened hunters and Jin Wu's shadow soldiers. Hearing this, Jin Wu concluded that only one remained, the colossal giant standing guard before the gate. As he surveyed the ruined city, a haunting thought entered his mind. The destruction before him reminded him of the demon castle. Could that endless wasteland have been a model? Did the system's architect design the demon castle as a reflection of this possible future? But the architect was already dead, and Jinwoo hadn't received a single message or vision since. Perhaps that really had been the architect's true body. Regardless, Jinwoo resolved not to allow this future to come to pass. That was the reason he had trained, the reason he pushed himself to wield power no one else could match. With renewed determination, he turned to Hankawa and said they were ready to move. Hankawa hesitated, telling him that the other hunters hadn't yet arrived. But Jin Wu assured her calmly that they had. Meanwhile, Kino grumbled in frustration, complaining about how exhausting and annoying this ordeal was. Minoru quickly reminded her that they should at least be grateful to still be alive. Hankawa, however, could not hold back her frustration. She vented that Jin Wu and his shadow army were pushing forward on their own, dominating giants that Japanese hunters couldn't even dare to approach. To her, it felt as if they were only here to clean up scraps, an infuriating realization. As she voiced her thoughts, shadows began to ripple across the battlefield. Jin Wu's army started returning to him, the air growing heavy with their presence. Then, Baru emerged from the dark mass, kneeling before his master. Jin Wu asked if the task was complete. When Baru confirmed, Jin Wu praised his soldiers for their efforts. He then ordered Jin Ho to escort Hankawa to safety. Once they departed, Jin Wu turned back to the battlefield. Stretching out his hand, he began performing shadow extraction on the countless corpses of fallen giants. One after another, towering shadows rose, forming monstrous copies of the giants. With his army swelling in both strength and numbers, Jin Wu gave a final command. All soldiers were to charge directly at the massive giant standing guard before the S-rank gate. The army roared to life, surging forward in unison, while Jin Wu chose to remain behind and observe the fight unfold. The giant, sensing the wave of approaching shadows, prepared itself. In a sudden burst, it unleashed a devastating mana wave. The attack cleaved through the shadow army with ease, scattering them by the dozens. Watching from a distance, Jin Wu was stunned. The giant had killed 100 of his soldiers with a single swing. He couldn't deny the overwhelming magic power it radiated. The oppressive aura was so intense that even he felt a primal urge to flee. But Jin Wu knew there were only two ways to escape such a suffocating pressure. Either run away and forget it, or completely destroy the source. Despite being vastly outnumbered, the giant refused to falter. The shadows were unable to close the distance, and even when they launched mana-based attacks, the creature remained unharmed. At one point, it casually caught a fireball in its bare hand, before tearing through more of Jin Wu's summoned giants. When insect-type shadows swarmed at its feet, the giant simply crushed them underfoot without effort. Baru, enraged by the sight, stepped forward, prepared to leap into battle. But Jin Wu raised a hand and stopped him. It wasn't time yet. For now, he had to keep pressing forward until he discovered the creature's weakness. His mana reserves were still plentiful, allowing him to continually regenerate his fallen soldiers. Yet even with relentless assaults, the giant's body showed no visible damage. It was then that Jin Wu realized the truth. The giant's immense mana was acting like armor, wrapping around its body and shielding it from all physical blows. But he also remembered something. Earlier, the creature had flinched and instinctively blocked when a fireball nearly struck its face. That small reaction gave him the clue he needed. Without hesitation, Jin Wu summoned Kaizel, along with his strongest shadow generals, Baru and Igris. Baru immediately sprang forward, his wings blurring with incredible speed as he aimed straight for the giant's eye. But the creature moved at the last moment, narrowly dodging the lethal strike. Meanwhile, Igris, mounted on Kaizel, swoops down from above and unleashes lightning magic. A powerful beam shoots toward the giant's face, but the creature twists at the last moment, narrowly avoiding the strike. From the ground, Jin Wu observes the exchange and quickly deduces the truth. The giant's weak point lies in its face. Its mana is concentrated on protecting its lower body, leaving its head vulnerable. The creature retaliates with a crushing blow that sends Kaizel spiraling out of control, forcing the wyvern out of the fight. Just as the giant begins to press its advantage, it suddenly notices Igris charging head-on toward its face. The giant instinctively raises its hand, blocking Igris's attack. But that brief distraction is all Jin Wu needs. In a flash, he closes the distance and strikes, landing a devastating blow that tears into the giant's flesh. The creature lets out a thunderous scream of pain. Before it can recover, Baru dives in with relentless ferocity, keeping the giant's attention locked on him. This gives Jin Wu the perfect opening to prepare his next move. Summoning every dagger in his arsenal, Jin Wu channels his strength through ruler's authority. The blades float around him, then surge forward in unison, raining down on the giant's face with lethal precision. From a distance, Jin Ho and Hankawa watch the battle in stunned silence. Hankawa mutters in disbelief, realizing that this no longer resembles a fight between hunters and monsters. Instead, it looks like a clash between monsters themselves. Back in the fray, Jin Wu channels his power into a violent slash, ripping straight through one of the giant's eyes. The creature bellows in agony, clutching its face. At that moment, Jin Wu signals to Baru. Without hesitation, the insectoid monarch darts forward, slipping into the creature's skull through the gaping eye socket. As Baru tears it apart from within, Jin Wu continues his assault from the outside, unleashing blow after blow. The giant convulses, blood spewing from its mouth as its body falters. With one final shudder, it collapses to the ground, its massive form shaking the battlefield. And then, the familiar system notification appears before Jin Wu's eyes. You have defeated the enemy. The episode ends here. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you're not subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. Thanks again for your support, and I'll see you next time.